Chapter 131. It's finally here. After 2 years, the flag is here again. In the study of the Akat family, Luoya's heart was beating fast as he touched the information in front of him. 3 years ago, in this study, the young Luoya's body was trembling as he flipped through the book, looking at the familiar family name. After that, one flag after another and difficulties came one after another. Ai Lizi Nua Iyer, these geniuses, one by one, formed a connection with him. There were thrills and crises in the process, but they were all resolved by Luoya. Even the 2 geniuses were roped in by him. Now Akat territory was steadily developing under his rule. The flag of the family was not completely removed, but at least there was no problem for now. In the system, Luoya had already paid 150,000 gold coins in the past 2 years. Although there was still 350,000 gold coins left, it was barely enough to cover the tax revenue of the territory. The old challenges were over. A new future awaited him, and new challenges were about to come. Xia Luot Sorofia, this character was Luoya's new flag. To be honest, Luoya was not as familiar with this character as Nua Iyer. He did not have time to play Xia Luot's side quests, but according to the information in the public line, Luoya could roughly summarize a few characteristics of Xia Luot. First, she was conventionally good-looking. There was nothing much to say about this. It was just that she was not as stunning as a 2D character. Second, she was cold to people she was not familiar with, and was almost uninterested. Third, she was multi-talented. She was a real aristocratic young lady, but she was not weak. Fourth, she was good at strange curses. Usually, she needed money or gems as a catalyst. Fifth, Xia Luot was very filial. She had a good relationship with her father, but her family was more chaotic. The black-haired young man racked his brain to recall, and finally confirmed these points. He then began to analyze. If he wanted to remove the flag, there was no doubt that favorability was an important indicator. Whether it was Ai Lizi or Nua Iyer, their favorability had been boosted by Luoya. Originally, Luoya wanted to hide from Nua Iyer, but the results later proved that it was useless. And this time, facing Xia Luot, as the betrothed, there was no way he could hide. Betrothed, this was a unique identity. To be honest, Luoya felt that it was a bit troublesome. At the banquet, when Kadia told Luoya about this, Nua Iyer and Ai Lizi had a huge reaction. The blonde girl lost her manners for the first time, and anxiously asked Kadia what was going on. The silver-haired girl tugged at Luoya's clothes and was about to cry. Without a doubt, giving up 2 flags for one was an unwise move. Luoya did not want to be hated for neglecting Ai Lizi or Nua Iyer one day, and then be stabbed in the back. Stabilizing the foundation was what Luoya had to do. And from another point of view, this engagement was also the easiest to remove, because in the original work, Xia Luot clearly hated this engagement. It was obvious that when a young girl was suddenly appointed as a fiancée, she would not be happy about this kind of thing. Some would even have an extreme reaction. As for Xia Luot, Luoya felt that she was the type of person who would stubbornly stand up for her family. The reason was that in the game, Xia Luot's attitude towards Luoya was very cold. She had once revealed to the protagonist that she did not like him, but because of certain reasons, when the protagonist and others ganged up on Luoya and beat him to death, Xia Luot did not do much, but she also did not show any mercy. From this, it could be seen that in the game, Luoya did not remove the engagement, and even used it to threaten Xia Luot. If the current Luoya did the opposite, and was willing to cooperate with her to remove the engagement, and return Xia Luot her freedom, then wouldn't it be easy to gain a large amount of affection points? Of course, the removal of the engagement was only one aspect. If she wanted to completely turn Xia Luot into an ally, then she had to start with her family. Xia Luot had a good relationship with her father, and she was also a person who managed a large family. If she wanted to have a good relationship with such a person, then naturally she would not do anything without her family. In other words, as long as Akat territory and Luoya were in a honeymoon period, then even if Xia Luot hated Luoya, she would not do anything. In this regard, Luoya had many methods. Due to the threat of his family's decline, Luoya had worked extra hard in the past few years. Now the villages in the southern mountain forest were much more prosperous under his management than 2 years ago. Every month, the number of carriages coming and going on the official road in rows increased. Now the only problem was the Warren mountain range in the south of Audiobook territory. It extended out of the territory and into Rose's territory. The Warren mountain range covered a large area and was rich in resources. Normally, there should be a lot of treasures in it, but it had not been properly developed for a long time. Luoya had already submitted an application to Sarot. If the proposal was approved, the two sides would become partners and jointly develop this treasure land. This way, one was to share the risk, and the other was to gather the strength of both sides to explore further. With this relationship, as the acting lord of Audiobook territory, Luoya had obtained Rose's goodwill and recognition. The two sides would become a community of interests. In this case, his relationship with Xia Luo would naturally become closer. Very good, no problem, no matter how I look at it, this carriage will not flip over. In order to leave a good impression on Xia Luo, Luoya could be said to have racked his brains. From the day's weather to the itinerary, Luoya checked everything, and even found a famous designer to design the dress. Xia Luo was a fashionista, so Luoya naturally could not appear too old-fashioned. The Audiobook family was more serious and based on the military, so Luoya ordered a slim-fit dress with elements of a military uniform. It was designed by Sarot's retired design master, Carter. He also had another identity as Xia Luo's fashion design teacher. Luoya did not believe that there would be any mistakes. As for the decoration of the house, after some research, the Audiobook family decided to abandon the luxurious and exquisite style and go for a classical style. There was no other way. No one could compete with Sarot in terms of money, so they might as well compete with their history and heritage. Audiobook family was a 1,000-year-old family. They did not have anything else but the collection of their ancestors and antiques. Luoya waved his hand, and the servants immediately began to move out according to type. In short, if he wanted to have a good relationship, at least he could not weaken his reputation. True friendship could only be achieved in a relationship of equals. Luoya's goal was to cooperate with Xia Luo to smoothly dissolve the engagement, keep his foundation, and then become good friends and business partners with her. After some planning, the young man was already confident. However, what he did not know was that the two girls were also secretly preparing. Chapter 132. Brother Luoya, can you sleep with me tonight? This isn't appropriate. At the dinner table, the silver-haired girl looked pitifully at Luoya after eating, and made a request that put the black-haired youth in a difficult position. For the past 2 years, because of Ai Lizi's insistence, Luoya gradually stopped feeding her. The youth understood this very well. After all, Ai Lizi was already 10 years old. Due to the magic element, the residents of this world were like fertilizer. At 14 years old, they were considered adults and could get married. Ai Lizi didn't need anyone to take care of her anymore. But at the same time, a strange request gradually appeared, and that was that Ai Lizi always liked to crawl into his bed. Generally, there were 3 reasons. Woo, big brother, the stories in the spell books are so scary. Big brother, I'm having nightmares. Brother Luoya, I miss you. That's right, the first 2 reasons were sufficient, but the third was simply a forced reason. Luoya naturally rejected such a reason. He was already 12 years old this year, and his body was already developing. How could he be like Ai Lizi who didn't know anything? But although he thought so, he couldn't reject reality. Every time Luoya steeled his heart and rejected Ai Lizi, the silver-haired girl would hug her pillow and cry. Big brother, do you not like Ai Lizi anymore? Do you find Ai Lizi annoying? Thinking of Ai Lizi's pitiful sobbing, Luoya felt like he was going to have a heart attack. Once he felt that it wasn't right to spoil Ai Lizi like this, so he forced the girl out of his room. In the end, he closed his eyes for the entire night, and saw the girl wiping her tears as she left alone. He tossed and turned for the entire night without sleep. From that day onwards, Luoya understood that he couldn't reject the crying Ai Lizi. But that was just that, he couldn't go on like this. Because of their bloodline, Ai Lizi had become more and more beautiful in the past 2 years. No matter what, they weren't related by blood, so it was easy for problems to arise if they slept together. Ai Lizi, you've grown up. I don't think it's appropriate for us to sleep together anymore. At the dining table, Luoya pondered for a long time. The silver-haired girl looked at Luoya's golden eyes for a moment, then asked softly, Big brother, is it because you already have a fiancé? What does this have to do with a fiancé? Luoya's words, Miss Ya Luot, who has a fiancé, compared to Ai Lizi, your fiancé's SS, your fiancé, your fiancé, your fiancé. After all, your miss is accompany hers. SAS, the girl spoke. Her voice gradually lost its calm. She took 2 deep breaths and turned her head to avoid looking at the dazed Luoya, as if she didn't want him to see the helplessness and weakness in her eyes. Luoya stared blankly at the girl opposite him. He suddenly felt that he had been so busy preparing to pull off Xia Luot's flag that he had neglected Ai Lizi. To put himself in her shoes, if Ai Lizi was busy meeting her fiancé, then Luoya, fiancé my ass. I'll break his legs for him. After thinking about it for a moment, Luoya suddenly felt a surge of anger in his heart, but he quickly sobered up. The youth coughed twice and tried his best to avoid the reality that he was a ciscon. Yes, fiancé and whatnot are all the poison of a traditional marriage. How can I let Ai Lizi suffer such a loss? Even if she really likes him, she has to be free to fall in love. Of course, it has to be the kind that Luoya personally checks. After letting his imagination run wild for a while, Luoya's thoughts returned to the dining table. He looked at the silent Ai Lizi and sighed. For the umpteenth time, the love in his heart had won over his rationality. Okay, but let me say this first. At most once a month from now on. The black-haired youth sighed and said so. In the next moment, Ai Lizi's face regained its smile, and she jumped off the chair and rushed into Luoya's embrace. Thank you, big brother. You're already so old, but you still like to act like a spoiled child. It has nothing to do with age. Girls will always act like a spoiled child to the person they like. Okay, really. Luoya blushed a little at Ai Lizi's words, and his heart felt a little itchy. After dinner, the two held hands and went to the study to chat and read. Chapter 133. In front of the desk lamp in the study room, Luoya looked at the translation of the letter written in ancient Austin, and his expression gradually changed. The content of the letter was very short, and there was no difficulty in translating it. Luoya understood every word, but he couldn't understand them when they were connected together. The content of the letter was roughly as follows. To the Lord, around the middle of April, I will arrive at the Twin Horn Port with the egg. Queen. The black-haired boy looked at the translated content and fell into silence, and the silver-haired girl on his shoulder was also confused. Brother Luoya, what does this mean? Let me take a look. After finishing everything, the young man retracted his gaze. He looked at the contents of the letter, raised his hands and summarized the key words. Lord Egg Queen. Through these he could think of an ancient royal family, looking for a child with a lot of money? Damn, this isn't a brothel letter, right? Luoya's expression changed as he recalled the shelf of pornographic books in the Labyrinth Library. He suddenly felt that this letter had a special fetish. This egg and the queen, could it be some kind of invitation letter? The boy's face turned red as he felt Ai Lizi's gaze and quickly shook his head to force himself to calm down. No, it shouldn't be. 200 years old pornographic books are already strange enough. Could there be a few 100 years old pornographic books? Yes, the egg. It didn't say it was a human egg. There was a port in the letter, so it was most likely a fish egg. Maybe the ancestor of Akkad just wanted to eat some caviar. But what's with this queen? There isn't a queen in the caviar business, right? She even went to the sea personally. Isn't that a little too low? Are you also the Prince of Planet Mayonnaise? Lord Queen, it sounds like a chess title. Yes, these titles can't be some kind of code name, right? Luoya blinked as he was reminded by Ai Lizi's words. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this was the case. After all, although the word Lord matched the identity of the head of the Akkad family, it was still uncertain whether the recipient was the head of the Akkad family. Thinking about it this way, it might be an internal letter from some organization. As for what kind of organization it was, there were two possibilities. One was a political organization, and the other was an organization of superhumans. Considering the fact that the Akkad family had been so well behaved for so many years that they were about to decline, the first possibility was probably impossible. The most likely possibility was that a member of the Akkad family had joined a transcendent organization a few hundred years ago, codenamed Overlord, and had some cooperation with this queen. It was probably related to this egg. Both parties should have agreed to meet at Twin-Horn Harbor. Judging from the date, this queen should have traveled a long way, and it was very likely that she had taken a boat. After all, there's an anchor on the wax, but it's really unique when paired with a rose. Wait, golden rose? The black-haired youth stared at the pattern on the wax seal, and suddenly realized that he seemed to have seen this pattern before. Isn't the golden rose the emblem of the Sorofia family? Sorofia? Big brother, you're saying that this letter is from the Sorofia family? Hearing the name that gave her a headache recently, the silver-haired girl's expression became strange. She looked at the letter on the table, and suddenly felt that Luo Ye's praise when she found the item wasn't very good. Can I put it back? Ai Lizzie sincerely thought so, but Luo Ye shook his head after thinking for a while. Chapter 134. Xia Luot Sorofia looked up at the starry sky, and she felt a little uneasy. It had been 5 days since Lo She left. Xia Luot's convoy had left the country, crossed the Warren mountain range between the two territories, and entered the southern part of Akkad territory. As a veritable rich family, Sorofia's convoy was obviously different. The dragon-like convoy was followed by a regular guard of 500 people. Although it wasn't a lot, it was quite professional. It was Xia's most famous mercenary group that specialized in defense. It was a pagan legion that had signed an agreement with Lo She all year round. Their source substance was perseverance, and the god of the source substance was the ancient Mother Earth, who had fallen in the First Era. Generally speaking, the risk of degeneration was very low, and their reliability was very high. Mercenary was one of the few proper professions that pagans could engage in. Therefore, Xia's famous mercenary group was basically composed of pagans. They generally wouldn't accept missions in Saint Maester's territory. However, as the saying went, there was no problem in the world that couldn't be solved with money. If there was, the biggest possibility was that there wasn't enough money. This time, the escort was really honorable. It was the eldest daughter of Sorofia, and the money was really high. It was 10 times the usual amount, and the mission wasn't dangerous, and the distance wasn't far. With these few conditions, what could the unyielding church, who had been relying on Lo She all year round, do? It wasn't easy to offend a rich person. Besides money, it was really good. The unyielding church's mercenary group was very expensive. But in addition to the fixed escort fee, Xia Luot's personal belongings were also very luxurious. It was beyond the imagination of most people in this world, even the nobles. Strictly speaking, Xia Luot wouldn't travel, but her house was moving. Xia Luot's moving tool was called the gem necklace, and it was made up of 16 carriages. 16 carriages, this was the standard for Xia Luot's travel. Each carriage was a large caravan, which was equivalent to a separate room. The bedroom, study, living room, kitchen, and even a small garden for afternoon tea were included in these 16 rooms. However, it was not a big deal if it was only 16 caravans. The great nobles from other places could also get a set, or even bigger and more. The reason why Sorofia's jewel necklace caravan was famous all over the world was because it used a unique spell technique. There was a door in every room of the gemstone necklace caravan, and this door was passable. For example, Xia Luot felt sleepy in the study and wanted to go to the bedroom to sleep. Normally, the motorcade would first stop all the cars and ask the owner to get out of the car and move. However, in the gemstone necklace motorcade, Xia Luot felt completely at home. She could directly go to the bedroom after opening the door and entering the living room. That's right. The spell technique that allowed one to jump between carriages was the true uniqueness of the gemstone necklace. Compared to that, the luxurious and exquisite decorations in the carriages were a drop in the bucket. Therefore, unless Charlotte took the initiative to step out of the carriage, she wouldn't be able to feel any sense of reality. And now, it was Xia Luot's rare time to walk out of the carriage. Looking at the stars in the sky, the brown-haired girl did not have her usual confidence and boldness. On the contrary, she was somewhat confused and even weak. A marriage contract was not something that could be easily ignored by any girl. In Xia, where political marriages were popular, traditional marriages based on benefits had always been common among the nobles. It could be said that the marriage contract was born for this reason. From the moment it was born, it was based on benefits. Therefore, it did not need to consider the feelings of both parties. Everyone in the marriage contract was purely a condition in order to achieve a result that was in line with their interests. Xia Luo had a sense of fear and natural resistance to marriage contracts. It was just like any young girl who suddenly found out that she was going to become husband and wife with someone she did not know. It was natural for her to refuse. And from the experience of her family, Xia Luo did not think that this kind of abnormal product could breed happiness. Xia Luo's mother was the best example. She was born in a great noble family in the Austin Empire. Because of the marriage contract, she married her father, Bruce, with the purpose of easing the long stiff relationship between Luoxia and the Austin Empire. It turned out that this goal was achieved, but the price was that Xia Luo's family was completely broken. Xia Luo's mother was a believer in the Austin Empire's orthodoxy. She was stubbornly biased against Luoxia. After giving birth to Xia Luo, she was not even willing to raise her by herself. After a few years, she returned to the country and lived separately. Xia Luo and her father, Bruce, depended on each other for survival. The relationship between father and daughter was very good, but Xia Luo's only memory of her mother was a few years ago when she visited the Austin Empire. That woman looked at her indifferently and did not smile. Her family made Xia Luo have a natural dislike of traditional marriage, but Xia Luo's experience in this regard was not limited to that. Sorofia was a great family, and Xia Luo had many relatives. In Bruce's generation, in order to expand Luoxia's influence, political marriage was the task of almost everyone in the family. Xia Luo's aunt was brutally abused by a cruel noble, causing one of her eyes to have vision problems. Her cousin also stayed alone in an empty house for many years because of her dissolute husband, and she still did not have a child. On the surface, nobles were all gentlemen, but there were too many variables in their moral character. There were very few good people who were strict and had high moral character. Faced with this situation, how could Xia Luo, who was about to follow in her footsteps, not be afraid? The girl was afraid, but at the same time, she also had some hope. Xia Luo, your marriage contract was signed 100 years ago. After 100 years, you were born at the same age. This might be a kind of fate. Bruce's words echoed in the girl's ears, and Xia Luo's heart couldn't help but be moved. Fate, this word had a special meaning in the Sorofia family. It was said that the first generation of Highland elves belonged to the goddess of fate. They were existences who could see the flow of fate, and were also the origin of prophecy and divination. This word had a unique charm. Although it was small, it did move Xia Luo's heart, and made her yearn and fantasize that should belong to a girl of her age. What if this boy who was the same age as her wasn't so terrible? Although the previous rumors about Roja were unbearable, but since more than 2 years ago, Sorofia's investigation documents gradually had a good evaluation. Now that he is the acting lord, he should have some achievements, so there is nothing wrong with meeting him a little, right? At the very least, this was someone who was the same age as Xia Luo, and not the age of the other country's royalty, who often jumped from 30 to 30. In terms of appearance, Xia Luo didn't have high requirements. In fact, she didn't care about strength either. As long as he was upright, honest, kind, and could give her happiness and a complete and harmonious family, she was willing to give it a try. For this reason, she specially sent her personal maid to investigate. "Gulacy, you have to help me look carefully." Under the night sky, the girl whispered softly, and her words traveled far with the wind. Chapter 135. Gulacy Sadie, the second daughter of the famous Sadie family in Rosetta. She had been hired by the Sorofia family since she was a young girl, and had accompanied Xia Luo since she was young. Like any maid who had accompanied their master since they were young, Gulacy and Xia Luo had a deep relationship. This deep relationship was also the reason why Gulacy still insisted on staying by Xia Luo's side. Gulacy was born in a transcendent family and was naturally gifted. Under Sorofia's nurturing, she had reached source rank 3 before the age of 30. Although it was partly due to the resources, with such strength at such a young age, she could easily become a powerful person in Rosetta and take charge of a department or even an army. However, under such circumstances, Gulacy had rejected all invitations, even orders from her family. Don't go. For years ago, when the 8-year-old Charlotte had shakily grabbed her sleeve and choked with sobs, Grace had already made her choice. Although she was a maid, she still had the feelings of an elder sister towards her family's young miss. The relationship between the two of them was not so much that of a master and servant, but more like that of a sister. As the saying went, reincarnation was a skill. To most people in the world, having Sorofia behind their name represented wealth and glory. However, in reality, Xia Luot, who was at the core of the family, had an unfortunate childhood. As a personal maid, Gulacy had personally witnessed Xia Luot's misfortune. It was a treatment even crueler than that of a single-parent family. Xia Luot's mother, that stupid pure-blooded Austin woman, hated her own daughter, and even felt ashamed of her. For a little girl to be hated by her own mother, this kind of behavior was far more harmful to the child than one could imagine. It was even more terrible than physical abuse. Because of this, the young Xia Luot had a serious psychological shadow. After the bloodline awakening, Xia Luot gradually improved. However, when it came to marriage and family, Xia Luot would still reflexively reject in fear. To be honest, Gulacy strongly opposed her young miss marriage this time. The maid believed that only free love could truly heal Xia Luot's trauma. However, unexpectedly, she didn't know what kind of magic potion Bruce had fed Xia Luot, but the young miss actually agreed to meet with him. Since her master had made her choice, as a servant, Grace naturally couldn't say anything. However, she raised her greatest vigilance and decided to check on her perfect and delicate young miss first. In Luoya's previous life, ordinary netizens would often send their best friends to scout ahead. In this life, the nobles weren't stupid. Before the marriage, they would naturally send their trusted aides to scout ahead. Of course, this observer naturally had to be someone they trusted the most. The reason was definitely not to see how the other party looked like. For example, this time, Gulacy came to scout ahead and informed the Aukat family of Miss Sorofia's living habits so that the Aukat family could prepare accordingly. This was a very normal procedure for nobles visiting a foreign land. After all, the customs and habits of each country were different. Some people did need to be notified in advance. For example, some countries didn't eat mutton, so a lamb chop for dinner would be very awkward for both parties. The reason was sufficient, but the real point was to scout ahead. Gulacy felt that she had a heavy responsibility on her shoulders, and vowed to find out reliable first-hand information. Luoya. What was the character of Aukat? What was the Aukat family like? Gulacy came to visit with questions one after another. Unfortunately, she didn't know that a large net had been opened more than half a month ago, spanning from Saint Lorraine to Aukat territory, waiting for them to jump into it. Sorofia family's personal maid, Gulacy Sadie. I'm very happy to visit your house. Aukat family's personal maid, Anna Eduardo. I represent the Aukat family to welcome your arrival. In front of the entrance, Gulacy, who led the team, greeted Anna, who came out to welcome them. She was neither servile nor overbearing, and her smile was natural. It could be said that they were on par with each other. Under the clear attitude of the two leading ladies, the tone of the harmonious atmosphere was set almost immediately. Sorofia and Aukat didn't have any intention of dwarfing each other, but they both abided by etiquette. Such a respectful attitude obviously won Gulacy's favor. In the past, she had visited many noble families as an emissary of Xia Luot. The servants of the large noble families were too arrogant, and the small noble families were too humble. There were countless such situations. In this aspect, the Aukat family's performance could be said to be very appropriate. The bearing and upbringing of a servant to a certain extent reflected the style of the master. Based on this, it could be inferred that the Aukat family had a deep upbringing. It was worthy of being a large family with thousands of years of inheritance. Making a plus sign in the small notebook in her heart, Gulacy and Anna entered the Marquis residence together. When they first entered, Gulacy didn't have any reaction. The accompanying Sorofia family's servants also didn't have any reaction. Although the decoration of the Akat family's residence was good, it wasn't considered luxurious, and it didn't cause any surprise. But as the two sides communicated and moved, the expression in Gulacy's eyes gradually began to change. She looked at the sculptures placed in the corner of the hall, the works of art hanging on the wall, and even the small decorations in the corner of the stairs. She gradually discovered that something was wrong. Antiques, they were all antiques, and many of them were old objects that were more than a few hundred years old. As Sorofia's personal servant, Grace could be said to have seen the various aristocratic families of rosettes. Some of them were resplendent in gold and jade, while some pretended to be elegant. However, she had never seen a family as ancient and elegant as the Akat family. Even the somewhat low-key style was something she had never seen before. As expected of a family with thousands of years of history, the entire residence was filled with antiques. The value of these antiques was much higher than the decorations made of gold and jade. Gulacy sighed in her heart, adding another point in the small notebook in her heart. Now she was quite satisfied with the Akat family. They had style, they had a deep foundation, they were rich, and their servants were respectful. Next, she just had to look at the young Master Akat, who was her fiancé. Young Master Luoya hasn't woken up yet? Yes, young Master Luoya stayed up late to study last night, so he woke up a little late today. Oh, I see, I was rude. Hearing the reasonable explanation, Gulacy softly apologized and nodded while looking at the closed door. Being diligent in studying is a good point, but he should pay more attention to his body. Thinking so, the servant girl smiled, but the next moment, the door suddenly opened a gap, and a beautiful silver-haired girl came out of Luoya's room in front of everyone with her clothes in a mess. At this moment, the crowd was silent, and Gulacy's smile froze on her face. Chapter 136. The moment she saw Ai Lizzie, Gulacy's brain froze for a whole second. This was a huge mistake for her as in source rank 3. From this, one could see how much of an impact this scene had on her. Studied too late last night? What did she study? Was it physiology? Grace froze. Behind her, the servants of the Sorofia family froze. The servants of both families in the corridor collectively stared at the silver-haired beauty, whose hair was somewhat disheveled. This behavior also attracted her attention. The soul-stirring young lady turned her head. When she saw Gulacy and the others, her eyes flashed with doubt. She lightly opened her mouth as if she was the mistress of this place. Anna? Who are they? Miss Ai Lizzie, these are the guests of the Sorofia family. They are the servants of Miss Xia Luot, who is engaged to young master. Anna, who had been well-mannered since they met, seemed to be a little embarrassed in this situation. She hurriedly stepped forward to block Gulacy's line of sight. Then she forced a smile and explained. This is Miss Ai Lizzie of our Akat family. She is the younger sister of Luoya. They usually have a good relationship and often read books together until late at night. Younger sister? Read books until late at night? When Anna said that the girl in front of her was Luoya's younger sister, even Gulacy couldn't help but widen her eyes and exclaim in her heart. Gulacy glanced at Ai Lizzie, who hurriedly adjusted her clothes to cover the kiss marks on her body. She felt her brain buzzing. According to the information report provided by Sorofia, Gulacy already knew that this young lady named Ai Lizzie was only an adopted daughter. She had no blood relationship with Luoya, but even so, the two of them were still considered to belong to the same family. How could she act so recklessly? An abnormal relationship between a man and a woman within the family was undoubtedly a taboo topic for Gulacy. The servant girl's expression turned ice-cold, and the servants of the Akat family quickly tried to mediate the situation. Miss, you must be tired from staying up all night reading, right? Do you want to go back to your room and rest? Yes, Anna. My brother is still sleeping, so I'll go back to my room first. Yes, Mississippi. The silver-haired girl lowered her head and did not look at Gulacy and the others at all. Under the cover of the maids, she hurriedly left with her unbuttoned clothes. Gulacy looked at her back and suddenly found that there was something wrong with her pace. Wait, Did they really have sex? This child didn't look very old. How could something like that happen at this age? Gulacy looked at Ai Lizi's awkward walking posture, and his mind was in a mess. Just like any adult who saw a young person messing around, the first thing he felt was disbelief. Maybe it's a problem with her sleeping posture. No matter what, it shouldn't be that absurd, right? The servant girl who was looking for a reason in her heart was a little pale. The good impression she had of the Alcott family, so far, was almost gone. Drawing a few minus signs in the little notebook in his heart, Gulacy took a deep breath and calmed his emotions. Although the Alcott family was doing well and had a deep history, the fact that Luoyo Alcott had a relationship with her adopted sister made her feel that this family was not as upright as she thought. It seems that I have to reevaluate the situation of the Alcott family. Gulacy regrouped, and the Alcott family also finished cleaning up the mess. Ai Lizi was escorted away by the servants, and Anna led Sorofia and the others to familiarize themselves with the mansion. The rest of the trip went smoothly. The group confirmed the location of the restaurant, the situation of the kitchen, and the day's menu together. After the two sides finalized the various taboos when meeting, Gulacy looked at the guards and frowned. From the beginning, Gulacy felt a little strange. Although the Alcott family was a big noble family, there seemed to be some problems with the defense of the Alcott family. There were actually two troops with different uniforms in charge. Normally, even if there was a difference in position or strength, the guards should be wearing the same uniform. Otherwise, it was very likely that both sides would be less vigilant against strangers. After all, no one could tell whether the other side had new members or not. For this strange situation, Gulacy, who was also in charge of Xia Luo's safety, naturally chose to ask, but he didn't expect to get a shocking answer. This is the army directly under Her Royal Highness? Yes, this was a gift from Her Royal Highness 2 years ago when young master returned to the Alcott family. It represents the deep friendship between both sides. Anna looked at the royal guards with a normal expression. It was obvious that she was used to their existence, but the words she said shocked Gulacy to a certain extent. Gulacy had long heard that the royal family of the St. Maester Church acted as the protector of the Alcott family, according to the ancient contract, but he didn't expect it to be to the extent of directly sending troops. From this point of view, the Alcott family, who had a good relationship with the royal family, seemed to have great potential. Although titles, territories, and the like were impossible to mention, as a big country, the power of the ministers of the St. Maester Church was still considerable. Not to mention other things, the influence of their political participation on the Church's diplomatic relations with the Rose Commerce United Nations was a big variable. Why did Xia Luo's father, Bruce, marry the daughter of a big noble in the Austin Empire? It was because Xia Luo's grandfather had a great influence in the empire. Similarly, if Luoya could also transcend the territory and lead the St. Maester Church to favor the Rose government, then Sorofia's benefits would be great. Chapter 137. Your Highness, these people are the subordinates of Miss Xia Luo of the Sorofia family. They have never seen you before, so please forgive them for their lack of etiquette. I see, it's fine. Inside the room, Nua Iyer, who was following protocol with a surprised expression on her face, subtly moved the chain in her hand behind her back. Anna also stepped forward to block it. Although the two of them didn't cooperate well, it was still a high-standard emergency treatment. However, this kind of cover-up only strengthened Gulacy's suspicions. Well, I've heard about his engagement before, so you can continue. After saying that awkwardly, the blonde girl quickly left the living room. Gulacy stared blankly at the princess who was wearing the chain in her hand as she walked towards Luoya's bedroom. In her heart, her evaluation of Luoya had already dropped to the bottom. This is one of the skills of the Saint's Dagger. It allows the projection of the princess to visit the young master. They have been good friends ever since they met, and they even write letters to each other every week. After Nuair left, Anna squeezed out a smile and tried her best to smooth things over. The servants of the Alcott family also laughed along. Hearing these words, Gulacy's heart sank to the bottom. Originally, Gulacy thought that the Alcott family was trying to enter the core of the theocracy to seize benefits. However, after seeing the situation just now, she felt that it was more likely the other way around. The royal family was secretly controlling the local Akot family and subduing the heir Luoya. Thinking about it this way, it was only natural that they would protect Luoya. The more Gulacy thought about it, the more she felt that this was the case. Although it was only a short time, she had already experienced the demeanor of the heir of the theocracy of Saint Mestre. The strong aura of a leader was obvious to all. It contained both sacredness and aggressiveness. How could such an emperor be conquered by a man? Not to mention a man who had an ambiguous relationship with his sister. After that, it was almost noon. When Gulacy and the others were about to leave, they met a black-haired, golden-eyed young man in the hall. It had to be said that Luoya's appearance had left a deep impression on Gulacy, but after experiencing all kinds of things, she was even more convinced that this young man was a gigolo. Gulacy, who felt that he had seen enough of the truth, didn't want to stay any longer. After more than an hour of discussion, some of them directly bid farewell to Anna. "Thank you for your hard work, Miss Gulacy." "Not at all. It's my duty to investigate these things." Gulacy waved his hand meaningfully and said goodbye to Anna, who seemed to have heaved a sigh of relief. When he walked out of the courtyard with his men, he saw a few maids drying sheets. Today's sheets are a lot harder to wash. And there's actually blood. Young master is really too rough with young Mississippi. Shoo. Someone's coming, don't talk nonsense. Hearing the information revealed in the gossip, Gulacy's face was already numb. She recalled Ai Lizi's unnatural walking posture when he left Luoya's room, and shook her head. In her heart, she browsed through the results of her investigation, and gradually made a decision. She absolutely couldn't let her beloved young Miss marry into this place. The next night, the gemstone necklace fleet. Before the dining table, Charlotte was completely unmoved by the delicacies meticulously cooked with mountain delicacies. Behind her, Grace, who had rushed back less than half a day ago, had a bitter expression on her face. She could only sigh silently in her heart. Gulacy still remembered that in the afternoon, when she had rushed back, Gulacy had rushed out of the carriage with a rare eagerness to personally welcome her, the previous observer. Unfortunately, Gulacy didn't bring the news she wanted to hear. When the servant girl and the worried but hopeful young lady looked at each other, Gulacy's heart uncontrollably ached. She knew that this was Xia Luo's attempt to start a family. It was a risk she took with great courage, but unfortunately, things didn't go as she wished. After keeping silent for a long time, Gulacy had no choice but to tell Xia Luo everything she had seen and heard. Luoya's appearance, Ai Lizi's relationship with Nua Iyer, and the situation of the Akot family. In front of Xia Luo poured out everything in detail. And the result of that was the current situation. Xia Luo lowered her head in silence for a long time. The atmosphere in the room was so heavy that it was hard to breathe. The servant girls looked uneasy. Gulacy's stomach, which was at the 3rd level of source grade, couldn't take the pressure anymore. She had never seen Xia Luo like this before. Whether it was when she was a stubborn young girl, or when she grew up to be a genius, she had never shown such a strong sense of frustration. Even when she was in the fringe, she only suffered from insomnia, but this was the first time she couldn't even eat. "Milady, you." Gulacy didn't know how to continue her sentence. Xia Luo didn't answer and only shook her head silently. Sometimes, occasionally, Xia Luo felt that she was a person who had been abandoned by fate. Glory, splendor, wealth and fortune. These were the impressions the outside world had of Xia Luo and Xia Luo. However, for Xia Luo herself, her subjective feelings were completely different. Her father who never had time to eat dinner with her, her mother who never showed up, her dining table, her broken family, and her lonely childhood. Those were the components of Xia Luo's childhood. Of course, as a member of Sarot's clan, Xia Luo had never lacked in material things. When she was young, she often used this to comfort herself, and the people around her would often tell her that she was blessed. She could afford expensive clothes that ordinary people couldn't even afford with their lifetime savings. She lived in a place that was comparable to the royal palaces of other nations. Her food was meticulously prepared by famous chefs. When she went out, she was accompanied by the best of the best. Therefore Xiaoluo was blessed. And when she heard the people around her say so, she had always believed so. Chapter 138. In the tea room of Akat's house, Luoya glanced at the two girls across the table who were obviously not right. His small eyes were full of doubts. What's going on? What's going on today? Luoya, who had just woken up, frowned and began to recall the previous situation. Last night, the silver-haired girl who was supposed to sleep with the boy didn't arrive on time. At first, Luoya thought that his sister was asleep, but when he woke up the next day, he heard that Ai Lizzie had burrowed into his bed again. Perhaps because he had been staying up late to read books recently, Luoya slept unexpectedly well last night. He didn't feel anything at all, and he even had a dream. Luoya couldn't remember what it was, but it seemed to be related to Ai Lizzie. But it should be very satisfying, and he woke up very happy. But since the dream was fulfilled, he naturally slept for a long time. Luoya slept directly until noon, and when he woke up he was even more shocked. He saw Nuaire, and it was a Nuaire with a strong curse reaction. It was obvious that Nuaire used the skill, Afterglow of the Crown. When he saw Her Royal Highness suddenly enter his room, Luoya was stunned. The skill Afterglow of the Crown's projection ability only appeared once every 2 years, and its long cooldown was simply speechless. It could be said that it was quite precious. Nuaire used this ability to see Luoya. It must be something big. Thinking of this, Luoya naturally thought of his father. Nuaire had been active in the eastern region recently, and this time he suddenly used a big skill to flash back home. Could it be? Nuaire, why are you here? Is there something wrong with my father? Hey? No, Uncle Kadia is fine. I just suddenly wanted to see you. In the face of Luoya's panic, Nuaire hurriedly comforted him. After a round of explanation, the young man was finally relieved, but then he felt strange again. As the saying goes, one never visits a temple without a cause. Did Nuaire really spend so much effort just to see him? Luoya felt that something was amiss. If it was before, Luoya could still understand. But after the birthday party, the two of them had only been separated for a month. Even if they missed each other, they wouldn't be in such a hurry. Moreover, Nuaire's attitude was also problematic. It was rare for the blonde girl to be a little dispirited. Or perhaps it was better to say that she had something on her mind. It was unknown what she was thinking about. Her expression was a little complicated, and there were a few times when she wanted to say something but stopped herself. Please, do you have to be so scary? What was going on? Luoya was very puzzled by the Nuaire's guilty attitude. He carefully thought about it, but it seemed that the Nuaire didn't do anything to him. He had no choice but to beat around the bush. Nuaire, do you have something you want me to do? I'm actually quite free recently. No. Oh right, I took some time recently to learn about the art of tea. I'll make you a cup of tea later. Okay. Luoya looked at the girl who suddenly wanted to make him tea and answered vaguely. After thinking for a long time, he still couldn't figure out why the princess was so attentive. However, what he didn't expect was that it wasn't only Nuaire who was acting like this, even Ai Lizzie was the same. Big brother, I personally made some snacks today, please try it. Ai Lizzie was as cute as usual, but when the girl smiled and fed Luoya the snacks, the youth clearly felt something strange. It was a complicated feeling that was different from the happiness and satisfaction of the past. Ai Lizzie had lived with Luoya for 3 years, and the girl was conceited enough to know everything about Luoya's life. She was able to catch every minute change in her brother's emotions, and could even induce him to a certain extent. It could be said that she was the ultimate form of a brother complex. But on the other hand, Luoya also understood this silver-haired girl. Ai Lizzie must have done something wrong, or done something wrong on purpose. With a preliminary judgment, Luoya blinked and didn't think too much about it. After all, if Ai Lizzie made a mistake, how could it be called a mistake? My sister is always right. Even if she's wrong, she's always right. Luoya forcefully cleared Ai Lizzie's name, but he quickly realized that something was wrong. Not only Ai Lizzie and Nuaire, but everyone in the family seemed to treat him well overnight. The maids smiled at him, The housekeeper was more friendly than usual, and his personal maid, Anna, took care of him even more today. It was as if Luoya had transmigrated into the main character of a novel overnight, becoming the center of the world, and everyone revolved around him. If AI Lizzie decided to treat Luoya better because she did something wrong, then what about everyone else? Could everyone have done something wrong? It was obvious that it was impossible. Could it be that they finally know how good I am? After eliminating all the correct answers, Luoya came to this conclusion, then nodded in agreement, but he quickly discovered a second problem, and that was, Nua Ire and AI Lizzie weren't fighting anymore. At the tea table, Luoya lifted his teacup and took a sip, his gaze reverberating between the two girls who were drinking tea and thinking about something. What kind of trouble was this? Usually, if AI Lizzie and Nua Ire didn't fight when they met, they would at least have a war of words, and would often ask Luoya to side with them. But today? From the moment they met until now, there hadn't been any conflict between them. This was no longer a case of the sun rising from the west. If it wasn't for the sunlight shining into the room, Luoya would have gone out to see if the sun was still there. Chapter 139. Xiaoluo Sorofia. Luoya caught. The next morning, outside the gate of the Marquis residence, Luoya, who had been waiting for a long time, stood opposite the red-haired girl and said their names. The black-haired boy looked at the girl in front of him and fell into a daze. So beautiful. Luoya couldn't help but think as he looked at the girl who politely lifted her skirt and saluted. As a person who was intimate with AI Lizzie every day, Luoya originally thought that he had enough resistance to female beauty, but when he saw his fiancée today, Luoya found that he was still too naive. If AI Lizzie's beauty was a creative work of art that could shock people to the core, then Xiaoluo's beauty was a delicate work of art. At first glance, it wasn't that stunning, but the more one looked at it, the more one would be immersed in it. The perfect proportions, the godlike facial features, the slender body and elegant hair, the noble aura that could only be understood but not described, all of these were conveyed to Luoya. Paper person, no. Real person, very good. In terms of interests, the focus of the two could be said to be very clear. Luoya was studying, Xiaoluo was making money. Luoya's side career was military command and territory management. Xiaoluo's was fashion design and musical arts. Without a doubt, the two's interests were a bit biased and didn't have many points of contact, so after a few words, they chose to quickly change the topic and began to talk about their daily lives. Oh, Miss Xiaoluo has already been involved in Sorofia's decision-making for 4 years? That's really admirable. I've only been the acting lord for less than 3 years. You flatter me, Mr. Luoya's wise name. I have also heard of it in Rose. I am ashamed of my inferiority to carry the banner of the territory alone in the absence of relatives. Haha, Miss Xiaoluo, you flatter me. Besides, it's not like I don't have any relatives. Actually, I have a younger sister that my father adopted. Her name is AI Lizzie. At this point, Luoya, who was obsessed with his younger sister, couldn't stop bragging about his little cutie. His proud look was comparable to that of a father in his 40s. The reddish-brown-haired girl's face stiffened when she heard AI Lizzie's name. She recalled Galacy's report and couldn't help but feel a sense of disgust. However, as Luoya continued to brag, Xiaoluo's expressionless face gradually revealed some doubts. Something's not right. Although Xiaoluo and AI Lizzie had never met before, would a normal person talk about his adopted sister in front of his fiancée? Moreover, his attitude was completely that of a parent showing off his child. Thinking of this, Xiaoluo's heart skipped a beat. She recalled Luoya's many actions after meeting him. She realized that putting aside her prejudices, this boy still had a high score in her heart. He was even better than Xiaoluo's best expectations. Could it be a misunderstanding? Xiaoluo's eyes gradually lit up as she thought of this. Her heartbeat sped up a lot. However, what she didn't know was that her actions caused Anna, who was behind Luoya, to secretly frown. As expected, those little tricks have limited effects. Anna sighed in her heart. She had to admit that her young master had the charm to dispel rumors. Unfortunately, this wasn't enough. The servant girl put her hands behind her back and gestured towards the door. Not long after, a servant came in and reported that lunch was ready. Luoya and Xia Luo stood up and said their goodbyes. They returned to their respective rooms and made some preparations for the meal. Luoya, who was temporarily released, heaved a sigh of relief. He had to admit that making a good impression was tiring work. The servant girls took advantage of this opportunity to rush over with a bunch of cosmetics to touch up Luoya's makeup. At the same time, they helped him change into a more convenient outfit. By the way, where's AI Lizzie? She's in class this morning. We should have lunch together at noon, right? Miss AI Lizzie went out. It seems that she needs to purchase some books. She'll be back at night. I see. After trying on the clothes, Luoya nodded. He felt that it wasn't bad that AI Lizzie wasn't around. In his previous conversation with Xia Luo, Luoya could feel the girl's resistance towards him. Luoya wasn't surprised by this. After all, 100-year engagement was too ridiculous. Xia Luo couldn't say anything, so Luoya would take the initiative to release her and harvest some good impression points at the same time. After thinking through the process, Luoya set off. However, he didn't know that the two girls who were afraid of losing him didn't understand his painstaking efforts and had already added food for him. Oh right. There's also this letter. Thinking of the strange ancient letter in the book, Luoya put the letter in his chest pocket. He decided to ask Xia Luo if this letter had anything to do with the Sorofia family. It could also be considered as a topic of conversation. The youth walked through the corridor and met up with the girl who had also changed her clothes in the dining hall. Miss Xia Luo, you're so beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Luoya. You're just... The girl who responded to Luoya with a smile suddenly stopped mid-sentence. Luoya blinked strangely. However, what he didn't know was that Xia Luo was looking at his neck in shock. It was the area below the youth's neck near his chest. The originally white area had a pink mark like a butterfly resting on it. It was AI Lizzie's kiss mark. Chapter 140. Uncle Kadia. Thank you for your cooperation this time. It's nothing, Your Highness, you're exaggerating. I was just instructing Anna to cooperate. In the eastern front lines of Tark Fortress, Kadia was chatting happily with a blonde girl on top of the city walls. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Now that the marriage contract was successfully annulled, Luoya should be safe. The middle-aged Kadia sighed. He felt that this major event that he had been worrying about for a long time could finally be resolved. That's right. Recently, due to Luoya's marriage contract, Kadia hadn't been able to sleep well. This was because this marriage contract that didn't seem like a major event could cause too many variables. To put it simply, it was too late. If it was 3 years ago, Kadia would have approved of this marriage contract that would last for 100 years. After all, Sorofia's conditions were indeed good. Kadia had also heard of Xia Luo's reputation. She was a good child. However, the problem was that she was late by 3 years, and too many things had happened in the past 3 years. In these 3 years, AI Lizzie entered the Akot family and became an inseparable brother and sister with Luoya. For some unknown reason, Nua Ayer had a special liking for Luoya and even became his protector. And no matter if it was AI Lizzie or Nua Ayer, they were both Shia's top extraordinary geniuses. And from the perspective of benefits, AI Lizzie was able to stabilize the Akot family's foundation and obey Luoya almost unconditionally. Nua Ayer was able to provide powerful political resources and protect Luoya as her own responsibility. One was in the family, while the other was in the country. These two girls were both irreplaceable. No matter who won, Kadia wouldn't have to worry. However, Xia Luo wasn't the same. No matter how strong Sorofia was, Xia Luo represented, they were still an external force. To be precise, they were a foreign force. They had the motive to take over the Akot family. Even if they didn't take over, the only benefits they could provide were financial resources. But the problem was, did the Akot family lack money? He felt that Luoya was lacking in terms of development, but the ancestral Akot overlord Kadia had a different set of logic. Lack of money? Would it be enough to fund the military? Enough? Oh, then it's fine. Kadia had never felt that Akot was short of money, especially since Luoya seemed to be doing well recently. Didn't that mean that they were not short of money? Stability was the most important thing. Money was secondary. Besides, AI Lizzie and Nua Iyer were free to fall in love on a first-come first-served basis. Why should they give way to a marriage contract that was made for the sake of profits 100 years ago? Ka Dia already had a stomachache when facing two transcendent geniuses. What would happen if there were three of them? Don't come home one day and find that your son is gone. I take back what I said about marrying more. Don't fucking mess with these girls again. Daddy is scared. Ka Dia was frightened by Luo Ye's situation. But he felt that his son was a little strange. He didn't do anything at all, so how could he make AI Lizzie and Nua Iyer fall in love with each other? Ka Dia couldn't understand, so he decided not to look at it. This time, he directly instructed Anna to take drastic measures. He didn't want Luo Ye's children to fall in love with him the moment they met. That would be fun. Of course, there was also the possibility that Luo Ye would fall in love with other people because of his beauty. That would be a little too much. Scumbags had their risks, so don't enter this line of work. As for reputation? Don't worry, it's just a little bit of injustice. Ka Dia would come forward to clarify the matter. AI Lizzie was young, so she could be blamed for the prank. Nua Iyer's dog leash was even more ridiculous. In 2 days, the princess would walk the dog with him and have a heart-to-heart talk. How could you blame others for thinking the wrong way? It was impossible for Sorophia to go on a blind date again. As for the aftermath, Ka Dia had already written an apology letter to Luo Ye. He just had to wait for the engagement to be cancelled before sending it back. As for AI Lizzie and Nua Iyer, the two accomplices, it seemed like they wanted to give Luo Ye a lot of benefits. Ka Dia didn't care about this. He was old and didn't know how to think. Looking at the situation, this matter should be settled. After listening to Nua Iyer's report, Ka Dia breathed a sigh of relief. He felt that things were settled, but was that really the case? If there was a fortune teller here, he would probably shake his head and tell this marquis an old saying. When the wind of fate blows, it is already difficult to stop. Xia Luot felt that the top of her head was a little heavy. In a special meeting, as the heir of an ancient family, no matter how lustful he was, he shouldn't do that kind of thing during his first meeting with his fiancée, right? Was it with the princess? Or the adopted sister of a mistress in a golden house? Or was it more like a servant or a woman? Xia Luot didn't know about this and didn't want to care about it. But at least when they met, Luo Ye shouldn't have left such a trace. Even if he was lying, he should have lied from the beginning to the end, right? Xia Luo was very familiar with the nobles' marriage in name only and their unfaithfulness. But in front of the person in question, it was the first time Xia Luo had seen someone cheating on her in such an open manner. I wanted to talk more, but it seems like there's no need to continue. After lunch, Luo Ye urgently gathered everyone present and repeatedly emphasized that it was an accident with the spell, and that the result was wrong, but it was obvious that this warning had limited effect. On the other side, Xia Luot, who had escaped back to her room, was still feeling depressed. "Miss, come out. We didn't laugh at you." In the room, Gulacy looked at the girl who had wrapped herself in the quilt and sighed helplessly. She didn't expect that Xia Luot would end up like this after using the Arbiter of Fate. Using the Arbiter of Fate bloodline to perform a fate divination would consume Xia Luot's spell power, and now the girl was unwilling to eat because of embarrassment. If this went on, even if Miss couldn't get out of bed tomorrow morning, she would at least feel dizzy. Gulacy thought of a way to comfort Xia Luot, but before she could say anything, the girl spoke first. "Gulacy, what do you think of the result of my divination?" The girl's trembling voice came out from under the quilt. The servant girl pondered for a moment, and said from a professional point of view, "It has a certain reference value, but there's no guarantee of the result. In the end, miss, what you're doing is just a rough divination with no cost and no clear goal. This kind of divination has low credibility and the success rate isn't high, and there are many loopholes. For example, the influence of the weather, the influence of the diviner's bloodline and source substance. As for specific problems, even if the divination result is correct, there are many loopholes. It had to be said that Xia Luo's questions in a hurry were mostly vague. The result of the divination was that both parties would be happy, but what was the specific definition of happiness? The divination said that two people would love each other. But how long would they love each other? Some couples felt that as long as they didn't interfere with each other like outsiders, they would be happy. Some loved each other for only a few days, and then abandoned each other. These two possibilities were common among the nobles. From this, it could be concluded that Xia Luo's divination was actually meaningless. Is that so? Chapter 142. Burning. The bloodline was burning. This was what Xia Luo Sorofia and Luo Yaokat felt at this moment. It was a feeling of surprise, as if something in their bodies had been awakened, as if the ancient bloodline had its own consciousness. At this moment, the hands of the young man and the young girl were connected through the ancient letter, and the curse power of the two miraculously merged together. What happened next was an explosion. It was not an explosion in the physical sense, but an explosion of the consciousness of the curse power. Intense light was emitted from the two of them, and in the white light, the two of them closed their eyes reflexively. However, what greeted them was not darkness, but an unimaginable scene. It was a scene of dozens of fleets sailing on the vast sea. Gold, silver, and gems, the art-like bow of the ships and the floating golden roses. In the midst of the sunlight and flying birds, the brown-haired beauty who was looking into the distance suddenly turned around. Her majestic gaze, with a hint of playfulness, seemed to have crossed the boundary of time and space, and intersected with the two of them. The short illusion only lasted for a second, and the unbelievable scene came and went with the light. Blood-red light flowed on Luoya's body, and the skeleton formed by the curse power of the Gulan Daer appeared. Its glowing eyes stared at the letter in Luoya's hand. On the other side, the brown-haired girl lowered her head in disbelief, and looked at Gu Xian and softly said a word. Golden Fleet. Miss. After the light flashed, the door of the room was slammed open. Gulacy rushed in with the guards from both sides. For a moment, the scene was chaotic. The guards drew their swords and looked for possible enemies, but more people focused their attention on the letter. Eldest miss, please let go of me. Young master? Grace and Anna's worried voice came from behind. Luoya hesitated for a moment, and gently let go. The situation just now should be related to his bloodline. Xia Luo carefully took the letter from the young man's hand. The brown-haired girl caressed the yellowed paper, and looked at the golden fire paint in silence, as if recalling the ancient legend. After a long time, the girl opened her red lips. I'm not going back. What? I've changed my mind, Mr. Luoya. Let's maintain our engagement. In front of the dumbfounded Luoya, Xia Luo said calmly. The Golden Fleet was an organization that Luoya had never heard of in history. Looking at the name, Luoya guessed that it was probably a fleet. Alright, I really don't know about this. There's nothing in the historical records of the National Library either. Luoya, the historian, spread out his hands, indicating that he had touched upon a blind spot in his knowledge. Xia Luo was not surprised by this. In fact, let alone a lord of Luoya's age, even the white-bearded old scholar of the country of scholars might not know about the legend of the Golden Fleet. That's right, the story of the Golden Fleet was not history. It had already reached the realm of legends. The reason was that there were no relevant documents passed down. According to Xia Luo, it was a story passed down by the Highland Elves of the Sorofia tribe. The time of the story was roughly estimated to be around 200 to 300 of the Third Era, which was about 700 to 800 years ago. There were different opinions on the location, but the mainstream view was that the current Rose Commercial Union was further south, in the territory of the Mandel Kingdom. Of course, this nuisance of a kingdom's history was only 200 years old, so it definitely had nothing to do with the Golden Fleet. However, there were some ancient legends circulating in the local area. For example, the Mandel Kingdom was once the site of a great kingdom. From time to time, there were some strange items unearthed, but the overall value was not high, so the country did not pay much attention to it. Unlike the local rumors that were so rough that only a few sentences were left, the legend of the Sorofia tribe was more complete. Just like the records of the Third Era in history, the ancient Austenite Empire had gone through a long journey of migration, and after a few changes of rulers, their organizational strength and discipline had collapsed. When humans arrived at the paradise in the West, they immediately split up. Other than a group of die-hard loyalists of the Austen Empire, each leader led their own supporters to explore the New World. One of them was a tribe with Highland Elven blood. This tribe was different from the other splinter groups. Strictly speaking, they were not a peasant rebellion, but a technical team. This group of people was a research ship, or rather, many of them were part of the ancient Austen Empire's navy. In the Second Era, the vast ancient Austen Empire had a period of great adventure. People dreamed of exploring the world, excavating ancient ruins, and becoming rich overnight. Groups of adventurers advanced to the end of the horizon and the vast land. It was a bit like the era of the great geographical discovery in Luo Ye's previous life. In this era, the navy of the ancient Austenian Empire was very praiseworthy. According to historical records, they once fought a war with the scaled race and the sea monsters that invaded the land. They won the war and drove them out of the coastal waters, making great contributions to the expansion of human activities. Although Luo Ye did not know the combat power of the scaled race and the sea monsters, he could understand that they were probably very fierce since they were an ancient race. The Imperial Navy could press their heads and beat them up, so their overall strength should be quite impressive. Chapter 143. Luo Ye had a bad premonition. Across the table, the brown-haired girl's gaze reminded Luo Ye of a lot of things. If he had to describe it, it was like a beast on the verge of starvation seeing food, or a gambler at the end of the road seeing money. In short, something was wrong, and it made his hair stand on end. Wait, Miss Luot, I think you should calm down first. Luo Ye, who sensed something wrong, waved his hand. Years of playing games with Nua Iyer had given him a premonition of danger. He thought for a moment and said, "Let me make one thing clear. This time, we are meeting for the engagement. The incident with the Golden Fleet was just an accident, an interlude, and this kind of thing only has a small probability of happening. So that's how it is. In other words, it requires a lot of contact and trial and error? That's not what I meant. After all, I have no obligation to help you in this matter, right?" Luo Ye was speechless. He didn't expect that the brown-haired girl would laugh mischievously as soon as he said that. Then, her expression suddenly changed, and she reached out to wipe her eyes. "Mr. Luo Ye, I didn't expect you to say something so outrageous. You clearly let me use the arbiter of fate to prove our love in front of so many people, but now you don't even care about my request. Wait, don't talk nonsense." The old actor Luo Ye was stunned by Xia Luot's tearful appearance. He never expected that half an hour ago, he had just played the role of a fierce fiancé defending his family's honor, and half an hour later, Xia Luot played the role of a weak fiancé being bullied by a shameless scumbag. "Mr. Luo Ye, have you forgotten the friendship between our ancestors when they joined hands to fight against the enemy? Lust, greed, these are all human nature. For the honor of our ancestors, I'm willing to use my body and wealth to satisfy you, but in contrast, you won't refuse this one and only request, right? Ayu." Luo Ye pointed his finger at the girl, who was wiping her tears. He was speechless for a long time. He had never thought that this usually ice-cold young miss would have such a black-bellied side. Her fake crying was more real than her real crying. I'm warning you, enough is enough. You know the situation of our engagement. Half an hour ago, you wanted to buy it with money. I deeply regret that matter, but I realize that I'm not the only one who wants to break off the engagement." The beautiful eldest miss lowered her hand that was covering her eyes. With a smile that was not a smile, she glanced at the stiff-faced Luo Ye. "The market environment depends on the relationship between supply and demand. I seem to have misjudged the situation before, and almost lost 500,000 gold coins for nothing. But that won't happen now. Mr. Luo Ye, what's your impression of me?" Xia Luot narrowed her eyes and glanced at the young man opposite her. Her charm made Luo Ye's heart skip a beat, but he didn't miss the girl's slightly curved lips. "Tsk, this girl. My impression of you? Sure, Miss Xia Luot wants to hear the truth?" Of course. Then I'll be frank, Miss Luot. Although your appearance is impeccable, I think that the most important thing is your inner beauty, especially your personality. It's not cute to like to laugh at others. Oh, that's really surprising. I didn't think that there would be a time when I have the same opinion as Mr. Luoya. Facing the black-haired young man's obvious ridicule, Xiao Luot smiled and touched her cheeks. She neatly retorted, Mr. Luoya, your appearance may be able to charm many girls, but unfortunately, you're not my type. Speaking of personality, I think that extorting your fiancé for the first time is worse, right? TSK, this girl is really difficult to deal with. Luoya looked at Xiao Luot opposite him, and found that the information from his previous life was no longer useful. Xiao Luot's personality would constantly change according to the different people she treated. At the beginning, when they were strangers, she was cold and polite, but now, she was two-faced and mischievous. He had never seen her before, so he didn't know how to deal with her. Although this Xiao Luot gave Luoya a deeper impression, and her flexible and intelligent charm was much greater than when she was cold, Luoya was now facing her. When Xiao Luot revealed her hidden poisonous tongue, Luoya's situation was very bad. So it's like this, Miss Xiao Luot. It seems that our evaluation of each other is about the same. Yes, I actually have something in common with you. To be honest, I'm a little ashamed. Chapter 144. Holding hands. This was a word with many meanings. In the most basic physical sense, it meant that two people's palms were touching. Later on, many meanings were derived from it. Some implied the establishment of a romantic relationship, some implied the alliance of two major powers, and some implied the ambiguity between an unmarried couple. Unfortunately, Luoya and Xiao Luot were exceptions. I say move a little. How do I move? This position? Then use more strength. Under Xiao Luot's urging, Luoya finally changed her strength slightly. It changed from pure skin contact to a real couple's hand-holding. Isn't this still ineffective? I already said that the possibility of it being like before is very low. As long as it's possible, we should try. At least it's better than looking for clues aimlessly. Holding Xiao Luot's cold and soft hand, Luoya's expression didn't change, but she couldn't help but feel a little restless inside. Putting her personality aside, Xiao Luot's body was truly exquisite. This kind of perfection didn't only satisfy the visual sense, but also the sense of touch and smell. Her skin was smooth and soft, just like the silk fabric in clothes. If one got close to her, they would smell a natural and gentle fragrance. Standing next to Xiao Luot, who was the standard pure and unsullied young mistress, to be honest, it was quite alluring. Luoya complained, but her body was honestly enjoying it. On the other hand, Xiao Luot was in a different situation. Currently, the young girl was lowering her head and thinking about her next plan. As expected, I still need to have deeper contact with her? Xiao Luot recalled the various divination and prophecy spells that she had learned. She couldn't help but admit that the level of two holding hands was too low. In the oldest records, in order to obtain spirit vision, the spellcasters even had to drink the blood of their target. Of course, this method was too primitive and barbaric. Xiao Luot firmly rejected it, but she could still do it if it was just a little more intimate. Hug me. What? Hug me. This way, the bloodline fluctuations should be stronger. 2,000 gold coins, hurry up. This, comparing 2,000 gold coins to her own moral integrity, it seemed 2,000 gold coins were more important. Luoya, who sold his moral integrity by weight, looked at the young girl who acted like she was doing business. He gritted his teeth and hugged her. Luoya wasn't a freeloader, so this time, Xiao Luot let out a short scream and fell into the man's arms. Luoya, can you not be so rough? Didn't you say to use force? Her body was pressed tightly against the man's shoulder. For the first time since the beginning of the experiment, Charlotte's expression changed. She took 2 deep breaths and tried to suppress her racing heartbeat. And I didn't say it was a surprise attack. Okay. You're the boss. Whatever you say is right. Luoya, who took the money, loosened his grip and let Xiao Luot snuggle in his arms. Luoya, who felt the increased temptation, turned his head and avoided the young girl's jade-like eyes. Xia Luo also suppressed her breathing and heartbeat. She tried not to look at Luo Ye's face, which was so close to her. Instead, she looked at her neck. However, the young girl didn't expect that her shyness would lead to an unexpected discovery. Xia Luo stared at Luo Ye's white neck. She was a little puzzled. She remembered that there was a hickey here at noon. Why did it disappear now? Hickeys were actually bleeding under the skin caused by too much suction. Normally, it would take about a week for an ordinary person to recover if they didn't treat it. However, for extraordinaires with strong recovery abilities, it would be gone in about 2 days if they left it alone. It would be even faster for those with a physical body, about a day. However, Luo Ye, or rather the Akot family, was obviously not in this situation. It had only been a few hours since noon, so how did the hickey disappear? Have you treated the neck? Chapter 145. A week later, in the study of the Akate family, Roha looked at the small clock and calculated the time in his heart. It was early in the morning, and the maids who had woken up early were busy. The kitchen staff went out to purchase items and would prepare breakfast in a short while. Luo Ye leaned on the large chair in the study and scanned the books in front of him. He felt like he had taken the college entrance exam in his previous life. Doing the questions until he understood what to do just by looking at the beginning and a few keywords. That was Luo Ye's youth in his previous life, and recently, Luo Ye was like a grandfather returning to his youth. A lot of things happened in this week, the most important of which was the buyout by the capitalist dog Miss Xia Luo. That's right, Xia Luo wanted to buy AI Lizi for a month for 100,000 gold coins. But this plan was rejected by Luo Ye. In his words, this was AI Lizi's home. And it was up to AI Lizi to decide whether she wanted to live here or not. Ever since that night when Luo Ye was forced by Xia Luo to act out a fiancé and fiancé scene of love at first sight, AI Lizi was completely flustered. When she heard that the original plan had led to Xia Luo throwing the coin of destiny 3 times in a row, AI Lizi couldn't take it anymore. However, that wasn't the end of it. Afterwards, the two of them even used the letter she found to stimulate the bloodline connection. And the aftermath caused a sensation in the entire mansion. When AI Lizi heard this, she regretted her actions and hugged her pillow in grievance and began to cry. After knowing each other for 3 years, this was the first time AI Lizi missed her nemesis, Nuair. Now that Xia Luo had the identity of fiancé, the results of 3 divination, and the bloodline connection, it could be said that she had the upper hand. AI Lizi was alone and couldn't hold on much longer. Unfortunately, Nuair was cut off at the eastern front line due to communication problems. AI Lizi couldn't become a friend even if she wanted to. She could only rely on Luo Ye's pampering and stick to her elder brother as much as possible. Elder brother won't marry that woman? He really won't? You're not lying to AI Lizi, right? I'm really not lying to you. We're currently looking for clues about the Golden Fleet mentioned in the letter. Our current relationship is just a disguise. Luo Ye helplessly explained to AI Lizi. As a large family, the Sorofia family's strength would definitely increase greatly once they found the curse system and the method of the promotion ceremony. Faced with such a situation, the Austin Empire would definitely do everything possible to suppress them. Therefore, Luo Ye and Xia Luo's investigation was currently under the cover of a marriage contract. Of course, everything was for the sake of caution. In fact, the combination of Luo Ye and Xia Luo couldn't compare to the reputation of the experts and scholars who investigated this matter in the past, so even if it was announced, it might not be taken seriously. However, it was always better to be safe than sorry. Under Luo Ye's persuasion, AI Lizi understood the importance of this matter. After receiving Luo Ye's guarantee, she suddenly expressed her desire to go to the holy capital. One of the reasons AI Lizi made this choice was naturally because of the deal Luo Ye mentioned. The other reason was that AI Lizi discovered that as long as she was around, Xia Luo would take the initiative to get intimate with Luo Ye. On the contrary, the two of them were more normal when she wasn't around. Without a doubt, this was the revenge of Xia Luo who saw through AI Lizi's intentions. However, the silver-haired girl, as an adopted sister, couldn't do anything in the face of Xia Luo's righteous fiancé. She could only helplessly avoid the battle, and yearned to go to the holy capital to find Nua Iyer to discuss this matter in detail. Big brother, you must protect yourself well. Don't fall in love and wait for me to come back. Thinking back to how Ai Lizzie rubbed against his chest, and said these words while crying, Luoya didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He and Xia Luo only had a deal and didn't see eye to eye. How could there be any feelings between them? Sigh, children these days are so young and their minds are filled with love and affection. How impractical. Gold coins, isn't it good? Thinking up to this point, Luoya shook his head. He was abnormally satisfied with his life of earning thousands of gold coins every day. However, it had to be said that Luoya was still a responsible person. Since he took the money, he had to do it, let alone this much money. Starting from the second day after Ai Lizzie left, Luoya and Xia Luo began a life similar to a summer camp. Since they slept early, Luoya would come to the study at 5 o'clock every day to look for clues. As a girl, Xia Luo would come later, around 6 o'clock. It had to be said that after spending a week together, and having a common goal, the two of them already had a certain degree of tacit understanding. There was quite an atmosphere of office colleagues. The black-haired boy looked at the time and entered the tea room. He took 3 spoonfuls of high-quality Qigong tea and poured it into a tea net. After the water boiled for about 3 minutes, he washed the tea and poured it. Then, he took out Luoya's unique mysterious formula. Hypnosis Spell Resistance Potion Type 3. The third version of the main potion used by Cassie of the Kingdom of Sleep to resist the dream demon. Only 1 drop is needed to wake up the mind, and bid farewell to sleep. Chase after these damned monsters and fight. However, for your safety, don't drink too much at once. Price: 300 gold coins. Not bad. This was the good stuff that Luoya found in the system store. 300 gold coins wasn't very expensive. The amount was about the size of a small test tube, but it was very durable. Only 1 drop was enough to make people work efficiently for a day. The price was that they couldn't dream. Honestly, this price was almost the same as nothing. In terms of color and taste, Hypnosis Spell Resistance Potion Type 3 was a reddish-brown color similar to black tea. The taste was very light, almost non-existent. When Luoya first saw this item, he thought that it was like black tea concentrate, but after actually using it, he found that it was really refreshing. Moreover, after drinking it, no one would attack him or make him scream. Reading books every day was fine as a hobby, but when it became a rough scanning and browsing, even Luoya couldn't bear the burden of reading for a day. It had to be said that manual Baidu wasn't something that anyone could do. After carefully pouring a small drop into the teacup, Luoya's black tea was completed. After that, he followed the same formula, but this time he brewed a type of flower tea exclusive to Akat territory. This was naturally brewed for Xia Luo. As the producer of the top-grade Qigong black tea, Rose's own people drank it so much that they almost vomited. So when Golden Rose accidentally drank Akat territory's specialty flower tea a few days ago, she was very curious. Chapter 146. In Luoya's previous life, when he was studying in university, he often went to the library to study under the pressure of failing his subjects. At that time, he was hurt. The library's 3 ultimate methods of killing dogs: holding hands, leaning on shoulders, and whispering. As a single person, Luoya was caught off guard. In a trance, the dog's head fell to the ground and barked. But he never thought that one day, he would become a member of this group of people. Feeling the smooth and soft touch in his hand, Luoya couldn't help but sigh at the difficult working conditions. In order to prevent missing any useful information that might lead to the creation of spirit vision, Luoya and Xia Luo had been reading books hand in hand for the past few days. But it was a pity that there wasn't much progress so far. After several fruitless physical contact, Luoya and Xia Luo began to shift their attention and focused on investigating the letter. As the content of the letter was too short, the two of them only found 2 entry points after flipping through it a few times. The first was naturally the location in the letter, Twin Horn Harbor. Luoya wasn't clear about the location of the Twin Horn Harbor. The only thing he knew was that it wasn't in the territory of Akat territory, After seeing the name of this place, he tried to search for it, but the map collected by the Audiobook family didn't have this name. In the beginning, Wuxia thought that it was a problem with the map. In this era, maps weren't something that could be found on the streets like in his previous life. On the contrary, maps were extremely precious strategic items. In this era without high-tech observation methods, map drawing relied on manual labor. This was a highly technical, tiring, and dangerous job. After all, no overlord would be willing to let others know their geographical location and strategic points. If anyone secretly drew a map, they would be caught and tortured. This was because if someone came to your house to inspect the terrain, it basically meant that someone was thinking about you. Even royal geographers with formal authorization had a very difficult job in the various territories. Not to mention the various underhanded tactics of the lords. Even if they did nothing, it would be considered good for ordinary people to finish mapping a piece of land in their lifetime, just by going up and down mountains and down rivers. And in Wuxia, this danger would be magnified once again. That was because there were more than just ferocious beasts in the deep mountains and forests of this region. Many of the mutated animals could not even be stopped by high-level superhumans. Normal geographers would probably die the moment they encountered them. The above reasons eventually led to the shortage of Wuxia's maps, but don't think that this is the end. Getting the map was just the threshold, or the first step. There would be greater challenges waiting for you next, such as distinguishing whether the map was real or fabricated. The geographer's moral integrity was not so good. Just like some islands in the Atlantic Ocean in Wuxia's previous life, in ancient times, the reason why they were drawn on the map was that the geographer missed his wife when he was drawing the map, so he drew an island for her. Some people simply wanted to be famous. They would fabricate a place and start bragging about it. Anyway, no one would be able to find it. Similar situations existed in Wuxia, which led to a very interesting phenomenon. That was, the feudal lord spent money to collect the maps, but when they looked at the names, they would find that they were all drawn in the same area. Then there was the traditional art of guessing. One of us is real. Guess which one is it? This kind of speechless situation was encountered almost every new territory. Fortunately, Audiobook territory had a history of thousands of years, so it was very clear what it looked like. However, it was a bit difficult to guess other places. Whether it was the century map of the theocracy, or the internal strategic map of the Third War of the Mutated Species, the major regional maps did not indicate this port called Twin Horn Harbor. However, to Wuxia's surprise, Xiao Luo actually answered this question instantly. Twin Horn Harbor is the Cursed Bay. Don't you know? I don't know. Do these two names look like they have anything to do with each other? Wuxia looked at the brown-haired girl speechlessly. After a long time of hard work, he found out that Twin Horn Harbor was a name unique to the locals of the Cursed Bay. Cursed Gulf. This name was much more famous than Twin Horn Port. At least a lot of people in Audiobook City knew about it. The reason was simple. It was close to Cursed Gulf. It was an undeveloped area on the east side of Warren Mountain Range. Of course, the reason why it was undeveloped wasn't because Audiobook and Rosetta were lazy, but because of the literal meaning of the name, which was the curse of Cursed Gulf. To put it bluntly, it was the low temperature. The curse of the Cursed Bay was actually the cold. According to records, the temperature in that area was extremely low for some reason. It was somewhat similar to the North Pole in Wuxia's previous life. It seemed that there was indeed a port with a good terrain, but unfortunately, this port was an eternal frozen port. It was covered in snow all year round. This situation that obviously went against the climate of the nearby area naturally aroused people's curiosity. During the pioneering era, many adventurers rushed into that world of ice and snow, but they often disappeared. There were only a few people who could return. The word curse came from the mouths of the survivors. The adventurers were not stupid. It was impossible for there to be any civilization ruins in this bay, and the benefits they could obtain were very little. After a series of failures, no one was interested in this place anymore. Over time, this untouched bay became the Cursed Bay in people's mouths. This was Wuxia's understanding of this remote place in front of his own home. And according to Xiao Luo, That place became a difficult project for Sorofia in recent decades. Loche was founded on commerce, and the port is especially important for commercial activities. The terrain there is a natural good port. Sorofia's ancestors once wanted to develop it as a distribution center for the central part of the continent, but they were unable to solve the problem of low temperature, especially in winter. The temperature there is even unbearable for horses. Xia Luo roughly explained the Sorofia family's resentment towards the Twin Horn port. The two combined the current situation and looked at the letter, and naturally found a clue. According to the letter and the information obtained from the spirit vision, the golden ship led by the Queen arrived at the Twin Horn port in mid-April. The fact that the ship could arrive meant that the Twin Horn port could be passed through normally at that time. It was obviously different from the current situation of the Eternal Frozen port. The purpose of this letter was to report the arrival date. The recipient was the Akot family, and the Twin Horn port was not far from Akot territory. After a comprehensive analysis, Luoya and Xia Luot initially thought that there were two possibilities. The first was that the recipient, the Lord, would go to meet them and both sides would meet at the Twin Horn port. The second was that the recipient, the Lord, would wait on the spot and meet the Queen, in Akot territory from April to May. The third was that the Queen did not arrive for some reason, and both sides cancelled the trip, and the letter became invalid. They abandoned the third possibility, which was possible but useless to the two of them. In theory, they should be able to find clues in the historical records. Chapter 147. Young Mistress. What do you think of young Master Luoya? Early in the morning, in Xia Luot's room, the servant girl was combing the girl's hair while asking this question. Hearing Gulacy's question, Xia Luot was stunned for a moment before replying the same way she did a few days ago. Of course it's to disguise our relationship as an engaged couple. Didn't I tell you before? Disguise? The black-haired servant girl muttered to herself after hearing Xia Luot's answer. She couldn't help but feel that something was amiss. It had been more than a week since she came to the Akot family. As Xia Luot's personal servant girl, Gulacy discovered a very serious problem. As time went by, the frequency of young mistress mentioning a certain person's name was getting higher and higher. Just like now. That guy Luoya's ancient Austin language is beyond imagination. He's obviously a member of the theocracy, so why would he learn that kind of language? Yesterday's clothes were not bad, but the style was a little old-fashioned. If I were to tuck in the shoulders, although I'm not sure, his supernatural power doesn't seem to be weak. He's hemming and hawing and isn't willing to talk about the details. So young mistress, why do you want to know the details? Aren't you in a cooperative relationship? Why do you want to know so much about him? Gulacy frowned in confusion. After learning that Luoya's information was the result of being misled, Gulacy was extremely vigilant against the servants of the Akot family. At the same time, she began to re-evaluate this engagement. Although the beginning between young mistress and Luoya wasn't perfect due to a freak combination of factors, it had to be said that the current Luoya could indeed cause Xia Luot's mood to fluctuate. The furthest distance in love was never discussed, but indifference and indifference. This was what Gulacy was most worried about Xia Luot. Xia Luot was naturally a little cold to others. This was the shadow of her childhood. She didn't rely on others too much and didn't trust others too much. Unless someone really walked into her heart, no matter how good their relationship was, it was just superficial. At that time, Gulacy conservatively estimated that it would take a few months to break through this ice layer. But the reality was beyond her imagination. The first time they met, Luoya had a bad impression of Xia Luot, but recently, as they got to know each other better, the situation seemed to be turning around. This shouldn't be a deliberate trick, right? Gulacy, who had been fooled by the Akot family's maid group, was a little traumatized. He asked Xia Luot how she felt, but he didn't expect the girl to laugh after listening to him. I will like that guy. Ha ha ha, Gulacy, what are you thinking? How is that possible? Facing the worried maid, Xia Luot looked as calm as Mt Tai after hearing a joke. You heard what I said before, right? That guy is the complete opposite of us Rose Nobles. He has little understanding of art and music, And his fashion sense can't keep up with my footsteps. Moreover, he isn't romantic at all. If this was in Rose Nobles, any of the nobles would have already written a love poem. Gulacy listened to Xia Luo's words and wanted to say something, but he hesitated. What about opposite interests and hobbies? After all, it depends on how one interprets it. Not good at art and music? Then wouldn't they complement each other? As for love poems, aren't those things a failure? In short, that guy and I are just an equivalent exchange. It's a transaction under the cover of a marriage contract. Xia Luo crossed her arms and judged the relationship between the two. Gulacy looked at Miss in the mirror with a complicated expression. He suddenly remembered the 3 fate divinations that had been forgotten. Were they really not new at all? The black-haired maid shook her head slightly. She didn't know the answer to this question, and could only silently pray for Miss Good Luck. Why did you suddenly fall asleep today? In the study, the reddish-brown-haired girl looked at the black-haired boy who was sleeping on the table next to her. She blinked her eyes in confusion. Today was the 10th day of the two's intensive training of browsing records. After half a month of getting along, Xia Luo had basically gotten used to the life in the Audiobook family. To a large extent, she understood the fiancé beside her. Therefore, she had the current doubts in her heart. In her impression, Luoya wasn't as vigorous as a dragon or fierce as a tiger, but at least he was full of energy. At least in these 10 days of boring browsing, although he would sometimes be absent-minded, he never showed any signs of fatigue. Xia Luo honestly admired him on this point. Don't look at how Miss came punctually every day to search for information with Luoya. Both of them worked until 9 p.m. before going to bed. In fact, Xia Luo had her own means to replenish her energy. Gulacy, Xia Luo's personal maid, was a master of Source Level 3. Not to mention her combat skills, she had learned a lot of daily curses. One of them was Gulacy's unique, deep sleep, which was a consummate recovery technique. Deep sleep allowed Xia Luo to rest for a night as much as others would rest for a few days. This guaranteed that she would wake up every morning feeling refreshed and healthy. Moreover, there were almost no side effects. This recovery technique could be said to be the foundation of Xia Luo's many years of high-intensity work. Chapter 148. What's going on now? In the study, Luoya woke up after 2 hours of sleep. He looked at the blanket on his body, then turned his head to look at the girl beside him. His gaze shifted back and forth between the two. This is yours. Thank you. I'm not in a good state today, so I accidentally fell asleep. Luoya raised the blanket and thanked her. Xia Luo nodded slightly. The young man observed the girl beside him, and suddenly felt that she seemed to be angry. Although her face was calm and she didn't reprimand him, Xia Luo's overall temperament had changed a little. Her usual noble and unapproachable aura had become somewhat cold and sharp. Luoya had experience with such changes, and had even studied them before. He believed that this was a manifestation of an extraordinary mood affecting the fluctuations of curse power. The black-haired young man gently placed the blanket to the side. He was no longer in the mood to think about the connection between the girl's temperament change and her curse power. Compared to that, he was more interested in finding out what was going on. Is she angry because I slacked off? That can't be. The most serious words were greedy, shameless, childish, and so on. Luoya, who was used to Zuan's trolls in his previous life, didn't feel any pain at all. In fact, he even thought that Xia Luo was quite cute when she squeezed out these words with a red face. Xia Luo was a dog rich, and not the kind of rich person who worked as a concubine, but the kind who spent money every day. How could someone like her be angry because he slacked off for a while? Wasn't this the same as how a Saudi prince was angry at a roadside oiler for wasting gas? How is this possible? What's going on? The black-haired young man glanced at the girl from the corner of his eyes, but didn't say anything. He could only work on the side. After this restless atmosphere lasted for 2 minutes, the girl suddenly spoke. Why did you fall asleep today? I'm not in a good state. Not in a good state today? What about a few days ago? A few days ago. I was all right. Is that so? Xia Luo smiled with a hint of anger. She stared into Luoya's eyes and asked, "Did you drink some kind of medicine?" Yes, but my potion is still okay. Leave it to me tomorrow." "Ah, what? Leave it to me tomorrow. You're not allowed to drink anymore." Luoya looked at Xia Luo's serious expression. He finally understood why she was angry, but then he was puzzled. This should be because she was worried about me? But why? Luoya didn't understand what was wrong with Xia Luo's brain. Why did she want him to drink Red Bull? But he knew that Xia Luo probably treated his medicine as harmful. "Actually, that medicine of mine is alright. The side effects aren't that big." "That won't do. Many drugs with minor side effects are addictive. It's better to use drugs with strong side effects." Xia Luo glanced at the pile of books that had been piled up over the past few days and warned her sternly, "There are so many things. Take your time to find them. If you continue to use the potions recklessly, I will have no choice but to write to Uncle Kadia." No, I'll give it to you tomorrow." Luoya hurriedly waved his hand when he heard that Xia Luo wanted to report to his parents. Because of the Golden Partners incident, Kadia strictly forbade Luoya from drinking any potions. If he wrote to his parents, Kadia might even ask for leave and come back to scold him. Chapter 149. The Austin Empire. In the vast Rumen forest, the observation platform at the edge of the mountain peak was already filled with people. Countless luxurious carriages and precious horses were gathered in front of the palace complex that had been built with a huge amount of money. Couples were holding hands as they squeezed out and walked into the main hall. This was the most famous dating spot in the Austin Empire, the Rumen Palace complex. It was famous across the continent. Every February, countless couples would gather in this palace that had hundreds of years of history, overlooking the thousands of miles of mountains and rivers of the Rumen forest, as well as the butterflies. Indeed, this was a sacred place to see butterflies. The weather in the Rumen forest was hot and rainy, and there was no snow all year round. Every February, a butterfly called the luminous butterfly would lay eggs here, and after a few months of incubation, it would transform into a beautiful queen of the night. This kind of mythical butterfly was just like its name. It would emit light in the dark, and the brightest one would be the leader of the group. It was definitely pleasing to the eye, but the reason why butterflies and couples were related was because of the Austin Empire's stories and propaganda. Legend had it that a few hundred years ago, the Austin Empire's emperor, Charles II, had proposed to the queen of the Rona dynasty, who was quite powerful at the time. The queen did not want to agree, so she said that she wanted to see the most beautiful thing. Charles was not prepared at that time, and he picked up a luminous butterfly egg on the ground. Under the catalysis of his curse, the butterfly hatched into a luminous butterfly leader, shocking everyone present. The queen's attitude changed when she saw this, and she felt that the two were fated to be husband and wife, so she agreed to the proposal. The Rona dynasty was then merged into the Austin Empire's territory, making the empire more prosperous and powerful. The above was the legend passed down in the Austin Empire, and it could basically be seen as an exaggeration. Luoya felt that the story of this legend was not bad, but as for its authenticity, he could not help but laugh. Although he had not seen any historical records and could not tell if the story was true or false, with the character of the little tyrant, the Austin Empire, if the proposal failed, the next step would be to use force. After all, which king of a small country would agree to a big country annexing a small one? Wouldn't that be retarded? Ignoring the truth and being cruel. The Austin Empire's skin is still so thick. I understand. After all, they have unified a big country, and the marriages of the neighboring countries should be unified. As for the Austin Empire, everyone who knows. Pooh. Listening to Luoya's sarcasm, Xia Luo could not help but laugh. One of them was born in France, while the other was born in the theocracy. Their families had been anti-Arab fighters for generations, so they got along quite well in this respect. But it has to be said that although the legend was nonsense in their ears, it was because Roja and Charlotte looked at it from a political point of view. In the market of men and women, this legend has a large audience. Ever since the legend became popular, More and more couples came to the edge of the forest to hatch the eggs of the luminous butterfly to express their love to their loved ones. After hundreds of years of publicity, the forest had become a world-renowned love sanctuary. The viewing palace complex in front of them was specially built by Austin for the nobles of various countries. Every February, when the luminous butterflies had just laid their eggs, this place would be crowded with nobles from various countries to participate in a series of interesting and exciting special activities. It could be called a love sanctuary. Of course, in contrast, the luminous butterflies in the Rumen forest suffered. They were kidnapped and turned into tool butterflies before they were even born. Honorable Sir, Madam, may I have a look at your invitations? Of course. At the entrance, a polite and friendly waiter took the invitation from Xia Luot with both hands. The two of them were a perfect match, and their dignified and calm appearance made the waiter not suspicious at all. After a quick check, he returned it with both hands. Welcome, Countess Roland of the Mandel Kingdom, Miss Xia Luot. The waiter's smile became even more enthusiastic because of their noble status. The two of them smiled at each other and entered the venue arm in arm under the guidance of the staff. Feeling the touch of Xia Luot beside her, Luoya couldn't help but be amazed by the magic of Serophia's curse. The Akkad territory of the Saint Maester theocracy was thousands of miles away from the Austin Empire. Naturally, the two of them weren't using their original bodies. Instead, they were using a spell unique to the Serophia clan that used twin stones. The twin stone was a unique and rare mineral that had a strange spatial connection. Usually, there were two of them in a pair. When one of them reacted to the curse, the other would react the same way even if they were thousands of miles away. It was the raw material for many expensive wedding rings. The Akkad family also had this stone, but it had never been used. However, in the hands of Serophia, an expert in gold coins and gems, using the twin stone as a catalyst, she could form a body similar to the three skills of Afterglow of the Crown from thousands of miles away. Although compared to the short blade of a saint, this body had almost no attack power, but it was not a problem at all if it was just a trip or a holiday party. In this era without advanced communication technology, people's faces were not that familiar. Even a famous beauty like Xia Luot was the same. Plus, the two of them were using alternate accounts, so there was no security issue, so they didn't make any changes to their appearance. Reality was reality. Even if Xia Luot was beautiful, the two of them didn't cause any commotion after entering the palace. Of course, this was because the two of them entered the lovers section. Everyone was busy with their other half, so no one had the time to care about others. If they were in the singles section, Luoya didn't know how he would look, but Xia Luot would definitely become a hot topic. He would probably be drowned by the army of single men. Sir, this is your incubator. Yes, thank you. After entering the venue, the staff immediately handed a metal box the size of a palm to Luoya. The black-haired young man took it with a smile and began to observe it. The people who came to participate in this event were either rich or noble. Naturally, the nobles wouldn't go looking for butterfly eggs themselves. This small box was designed for this purpose, and it had two main functions. First, holding the box would prevent people from touching the butterfly eggs themselves. After all, those things were disgusting to some people, so touching them was really uncomfortable. Chapter 150. When Xia Luot casually said this sentence, Luoya was speechless for the first time. He stared blankly at the woman in the blue dress who was talking and laughing with the man, and the expressionless Xia Luot. For a moment his mind went blank. If she was Xia Luot's mother, then who was he? Luoya looked at the blonde man who was talking to his mother-in-law in name, and his face stiffened. As the marriage partner, Luoya had naturally seen Xia Luot's family records. He had seen the portraits of the girl's family. Xia Luot's biological father, Bruce, was a brown-haired muscular man. He was obviously not the blonde from before. Most importantly, the information did not say that Xia Luot's parents were divorced. During their marriage, Xia Luot's mother came here. What was the situation now? Catching adultery? Catching his own mother in the act? Was it that exciting? Luoya stared at the girl beside him with wide eyes. He was really shocked by the plot of the TV series. Before this, Luoya only thought that Xia Luo wanted to see butterflies and was unwilling to enter the singles area to cause trouble, so she kidnapped him to be a tool. But now it seemed that was not right. What should he do now? Destroy the scene? That shouldn't be the case. It was impossible. The two of them were not in their original bodies. Any source level 6 would be able to defeat them. If that was the case, I understand. You want to collect evidence, right? How should I do it? I haven't learned much about curses in this area. Luoya looked at the man and woman in front of him excitedly. He was ready to go, just like a tabloid reporter, waiting for a curse to deliver justice. However, what he did not expect was that the brown-haired girl was stunned when she heard Luoya's words. What's wrong? You're welcome. Forget about the others, I will definitely help you with this. The black-haired young man patted his chest and turned into a Tyrant executioner. He looked ahead and gritted his teeth. Damn it, the Tyrant must die. Yellow-haired dog is obviously not a good thing. Luoya rubbed his fists, but Xia Luo looked embarrassed. She wanted to say something but stopped several times. In the end, she forced a smile on her face. Thank you, Luoya, but forget it. Xia Luo smiled sadly and turned to look ahead. You misunderstood. I'm not here to do anything. I just want to see her. Take a look. The last time I saw her was 5 years ago. Luoya's eyes widened when she heard Xia Luo's words. The girl pondered for a while before finally downplaying her situation. It was a story that Luoya could not find any trace of in the information. And it was also a narrative that made him unable to calm down for a long time after listening to it. To be honest, Xia Luo's situation was a little beyond his imagination. Xia Luo's mother, Adela Milton, was the second daughter of Duke Milton of the Austin Empire. This family was a big family with a long history, originating from the ancient Austin Empire in the Second Era. Strictly speaking, their heritage was longer than Luoya's Akate family. With such a long history, their power was naturally not to be underestimated. In fact, in the beginning of the Third Era when humans migrated to the West, the Milton family was in the position of manager. What happened next was well known. After arriving at the New World, the internal conflicts that had been hidden in the human team erupted. The ancient Austin Empire fell apart. For a time, there were many factions, and everyone went their own way. Milton was a stubborn conservative at that time. As a vested interest, he was unwilling to recognize any organization that escaped from his control. Milton and several other big families of the ancient Austin Empire were the foundation of the establishment of the Austin Empire. In order to highlight their own orthodoxy, this group of remnants of the ancient Austin Empire came up with the famous Orthodox bloodline theory. The Orthodox bloodline theory could be summarized as the theory that except for the Austin Empire, everyone was unruly. This theory was based on history and touted the bloodline of the ancient Austin nobles as noble bloodlines. They were superior bloodlines that should dominate other countries. The citizens of the Austin Empire were Shia's first-class citizens, and the other countries were at most second-class citizens. This theory greatly condensed the power of the Austin Empire for a certain period of time, causing it to annex the surrounding countries after its reconstruction. And its territory continued to expand. In the eyes of the Austin Empire, their war was just and righteous, and it was a punishment for those who violated it. The land that they conquered was not an invasion, but a return. The Orthodox bloodline theory was the root of the Austin Empire's arrogance. After becoming a big country, it became even more popular among the people. Among them, the extremists even advocated marriage between the nobles, to prevent the noble bloodline from flowing out. Xia Luo's mother, Adelisa, was a beneficiary and believer of the extreme bloodline theory. More than 10 years ago, in order to improve the relationship with the Austin Empire, Ratchet strongly supported the moderate Milton family. Adelisa, as the representative of the Union, married the president of the Ratchet Union, Bruce. This was the background of Xia Luo's family, a castle in the sky without a trace of romance and freedom. It was completely driven by profit, and there were only results. Luoya once heard a saying in his previous life, "When a marriage collapses, the weaker one will be hurt more." This saying was perfectly replicated in Xiaoluot. Adelisa abandoned Xiaoluot. In the eyes of this bigoted woman, Xiaoluot was unclean and had insulted the noble bloodline of the Milton family. Her existence was a stain on her. Chapter 151. What kind of person could be called beautiful and noble? Perhaps this question was too complicated. What was the object of beauty? Where did the concept of nobility come from? Luoya did not have the ability to analyze this question from a philosophical point of view, but he at least knew one thing. That was, the values of an ordinary person could not be more normal. If there was anything that could be called a mother's beauty, then perhaps it was the gentle smile she revealed when she stroked her child's head. If there was anything that could be called a woman's nobility, then it was the shining quality and thought that was deeply embedded in their bones. A beautiful face that was meticulously groomed, a self-constructed identity that was superior to others. These things were like bubbles that popped in the face of true beauty and nobility. When the wind of time and era blew, everything would be replaced with the real. Luoya looked at Xiaoluot in front of him, suddenly understanding where the injustice in his heart came from. Ah, so that's how it is. It's because the two of us are mostly similar but slightly different. The black-haired youth revealed a relieved and helpless smile, watching the light in his hand as he exerted more force. Luoya, Akit, everything seemed to have started from his past life, but in fact this was wrong. Although it was very little, Luoya vaguely remembered his past naughty and weak self. It was a distant memory that he could barely remember, but faintly existed in his heart. It was the pain and confusion of a child who lost his mother at a young age. It was a pain that was difficult to avoid during his growth. The desire for affection and love accompanied his childhood, but was often unable to obtain them, and gradually became distorted because of this. Luoya and Xiaoluo were similar. They had both struggled alone in an empty home, accompanied by candlelight. When night fell, the moonlight in the room was their only companion. He sympathized with Xiaoluot, and at the same time, with his past self who had not remembered everything. But the two of them were different, and that was that Xiaoluot actually had a mother. Adelisa, this woman's actions, although slight, had indeed pricked Luoya's nerves, making him feel a deep sense of disgust. This was the feeling that this woman gave him when she threw something that he couldn't get to her on the ground, and trampled on it. Some people say that the more muddy the environment, the brighter the rose that blooms. In that case, Miss Xiaoluot, your kindness and strength are the golden rose in my eyes. In the light and waves, the black-haired boy looked into the girl's eyes and said. His golden pupils were now emitting layers of light, majestic and mysterious. The crimson power of the spell was like a flame rolling and multiplying endlessly. Xiaoluot stared into his eyes and suddenly saw a little pity in them. In just a few seconds, Xiaoluot's pale face quickly turned red. Luoya smiled gently. He raised his hand and the red curse power turned into a spiral and drilled into the box. The incubator creaked and was full of cracks. Crack. In the crisp sound of the box breaking, Luoya's hand emitted a little light. At the same time, on the high platform in the distance, a ball of light also spread its wings amidst the cheers of the nobles of the Austin Empire. It was a luminous butterfly with a pair of green wings. The moment it appeared, the light reflected on the cheeks of everyone around it. The pureblood nobles of the Austin Empire sang and danced, and Adelice's face also showed a smile. The most beautiful and dazzling butterfly to appear in the pureblood faction was designed by the Milton family over the years. It represented their nobility and elegance. But this year, the one hatched by the prince of the empire was especially beautiful, and its light was also the brightest in all the years. The butterfly broke out of the cocoon and spread its wings. It was about to spread its wings amidst the exclamations of the crowd. No one doubted the status of this butterfly. It was the most powerful and moving one in all the years, just like the Austin Empire. No one could stop it. The cheers of the crowd were loud and enthusiastic, but soon someone realized that something was wrong. Wait, why isn't it flying down? No, none of the butterflies have flown away. The nobles of the Austin Empire who were looking up at the sky also realized that something was wrong. The young masters and young ladies of the noble families also began to whisper to each other. The guests who came from afar looked at the butterflies hovering above their heads without knowing anything. Everyone's eyes were focused on the black-haired young man in the corner of the high platform. Luoya was still suppressing the power of the spell to flow into the incubator. He had already seen the butterfly in the Austin Empire, so he decided to give it his all. This butterfly was not only a competition of personal feelings, but also the first gift to Xia Luot. It must be kind and beautiful, just like the girl in front of him. The moment it was born, the butterflies of the Rumen forest would have a new leader, and it would be born as a king. Luoya was giving it his all, but what he did not know was that at the end of the world where no one could reach, the huge skeleton was also watching. His eyes were shining, waiting for the miracle buried in time to appear again. It's done. A few seconds later, the black-haired young man said so softly. What followed was a muffled sound and a bright spiral of light. The incubator exploded. The cage that held the butterfly egg had completely fallen to the ground and shattered into pieces. In the soft sound of the pieces falling to the ground, the butterflies moved. Chapter 152. When Xia Luot's kiss landed on his face, Luoya's mind went blank, but he found it hard to refuse. Not only was the kiss irresistible, but it also represented Xia Luot's sincerity. This was a kiss that represented blessings and luck. It was a reward from a lady to a man who brought her beautiful butterflies. It was reasonable, formal, and irresistible. Luoya didn't know how much determination Xia Luot had to make such a move, but at the very least, it should be far more difficult for her to make such a move than it was for ordinary girls. But there was one thing that Luoya didn't expect, and that was that this kiss would trigger a conflict in his bloodline. It was a flash of images. There were so many of them that Luoya didn't even have time to remember them. At that moment, all the sounds around him disappeared, and Luoya's vision seemed to travel back in time hundreds of years ago. It was a man and a woman, a tall woman with reddish-brown hair, and a black-haired man with a cold expression. There were many images that flashed past. Battles, life, happy chatting, talking with someone with a serious expression, and finally, a parting kiss. Wait, this is... Luoya looked at the woman who kissed the man's cheek and waved goodbye with a smile. He suddenly had a strange feeling. It was like Xia Luot, but it wasn't. What was this? While Luoya was confused, the man in the image turned his head, and his eyes seemed to pass through the barrier of time and space. Luoya saw his face clearly for the first time. It's him. At this moment, Luoya's heart surged with stormy waves, but he suddenly felt a little relieved. The next moment, the spirit vision ended, and the cheers in his ears drew Luoya back to reality. Oh! The excited and enthusiastic cheers came from the audience, not only from the couple area, but also from the singles area. The desire for love didn't care about nationality. Austinites were also happy to eat melons, not to mention in such an atmosphere. Luoya. What was that just now? Well, it's a little messy. Let me calm down first. After the kiss, the two separated and were a little dazed by the excessive amount of information, but this expression meant something else in the eyes of others. Thank you, sir and miss, for your demonstration. Dear Xia, their love will be guided by fate. Oh, the crowd cheered louder and louder. Some couples in the singles area began to shout, and couples in the couples area also began to show their affection. Only Luoya and Xia Luot were silent in the chaotic background, until the middle-aged man's next spoke. Well, you two, you can go to the pavilion. Luoya turned her head in surprise and saw the middle-aged man smiling meaningfully. Sir, I wish you an unforgettable night. The pavilion was a general name, and it could be roughly understood as the presidential suite in Luoya's previous life. It had to be said that the Milton family was quite good at business operations. Perhaps they had learned a thing or two from their marriage with Sorophia, but they were very good at marketing. For example, this luminous butterfly convention didn't exist a few decades ago. However, as the Milton family continued to build and promote this place, this local tradition of the Austin Empire became more and more famous in Xia. And this pavilion was a product of this situation. It was designed on the highest floor of the Cliff Palace, and it was as magnificent as a palace with a good view. Every year, except for the group of Austin Pureblood School who had cerebral palsy who entertained themselves, it was the place where couples who hatched head butterflies would stay for the night. With such great luck and blessings, coupled with the fact that they were couples, it was needless to say what they would do in such an environment. But this time, for the newcomers, it was too exciting. You really didn't come here on purpose? No, I didn't. Weren't you there? We left together. I couldn't help it. What could I do in such an atmosphere? On the big bed in the presidential suite, a reddish-brown girl hugged a pillow with half of her face exposed. She looked pitifully at the young man who was eager to explain himself. Her eyes were filled with fear, but occasionally, a hint of expectation flashed in those beautiful pupils of hers. Xia Luot, whose brain was severely congested, didn't know what she was thinking anymore. She felt that Luo Ye seemed to have changed into a different person tonight, and Luo Ye's reaction was basically the same. Chapter 153. Regardless of the world, regardless of the era, the construction of spiritual civilization and self-identity was an important task for every leader. In the Akkad family, their efforts in this field could be traced back to thousands of years ago. An important way for nobles to confirm their identity was through historical inheritance. Therefore, just like any other great noble family, from the moment the family was established, every lord would do their best to leave behind something for their descendants to prove their existence. The most typical example was naturally a portrait. My son knows what I look like, my grandson knows what I look like, but my grandson's grandson might not. This was a very realistic point. Even if it was a long-lived extraordinaire, no one dared to pat their chest and guarantee 100 years of peace, let alone a normal person. Therefore, a portrait was especially important. In order to leave their appearance for their descendants to admire, the head of the Akkad family would usually hire a contemporary master to draw a portrait for them when they were in their 20s or 30s. These portraits were kept in the family's special warehouse, and Luo Ye often looked at them when he was young. Of course, he didn't show any respect at that time, just like any naughty child. Luo Ye was also a beauty pageant master, and had participated in many most beautiful ancestor contests, and one of them left a deep impression on him. It was an ancestor whose name shook the world a few hundred years ago, Vincent Akkad. Vincent's adventure was a family story that Luo Ye often heard when he was young. After he grew up and awakened his bloodline, Luo Ye became even more curious about this ancestor, who also awakened his bloodline. Vincent's era was too long ago, and most of the related records were lost. However, Luo Ye clearly remembered his appearance, and that was why he was able to recognize him at the first moment with his spirit vision. I didn't expect the overlord to be him. Luo Ye stared at the sparkling wine in his glass, and listened to the sound of ice cubes hitting the glass when he shook it gently. For a moment, he had a lot of thoughts, and at the same time, he had a bad premonition and great curiosity. Vincent was one of the strongest people in the human world at that time, so how could the organization he joined be an ordinary one? More importantly, if Luo Ye wasn't wrong, Vincent shouldn't be the leader of this organization. He clearly remembered one of the scenes that flashed through his mind. It was a scene of a group of people having a meeting on both sides of the table. At that table, Vincent was not at the head of the table, but rather at the back. Of course, he was still young in that picture. He was around 18 years old, but according to historical records, Vincent was at least at source rank 3 at that time. Level 3 source rank, he couldn't even sit in the front row. This was a bit too terrifying. One had to know that in Shiya's current state, there were only a few people who were at source rank 1. Source rank 2 was already considered the peak of combat strength. For example, Prince Vader, whom Luo Ye had met in the past, had the ability to single-handedly control the battlefield even though he was severely injured. This kind of power was enough to lead people to open up new territories in this world. Next was source rank 3. Although it was far from source rank 2, it was more than enough to be a general of a large country. However, this level of combat power was actually not ranked at that table. This meant that the overall strength of this organization was very terrifying. And looking at the situation, the Queen of the Sophia dynasty was also a member of this organization. What kind of organization could make Vincent join? The same bloodline made Luoya very curious. If the reason he helped Xia Luo before was for money and strength, then now he really wanted to understand some things. The Akat family's bloodline awakeners were short-lived. Why was this? Did they disappear because of an enemy or an accident? If there was an enemy, then who was the enemy? Countless mysteries rose and fell in the black-haired boy's heart. His worried appearance also attracted the curiosity of the girl on the bed. Luoya, what's wrong with you? You don't look well. It's nothing. I was just thinking about what happened before. Is it about our ancestors joining the Twilight Sage Association? Luoya, who was deep in thought, suddenly turned his head when he heard Xia Luo's words. He stared at the girl with surprise. The reddish-brown-haired girl was stunned. You know about the organization they joined? Yes, I saw the symbol on their chests in my spirit vision. It was indeed the identity symbol of the Twilight Sage Association. Twilight Sage Association? What's that? Luoya's face twitched when he heard the name of this evil organization. In his previous life, nothing good could come out of Twilight. This was even more so for organizations. 8 out of 10 of them wanted to destroy the world. Could this old ancestor of his be a member of some evil cult? Luoya thought so worriedly. Xia Luo's face was not hazy. She put down the hand holding the pillow slightly to reveal her face. After thinking for a while, she said hesitantly, Actually, I only know the name. As for how I know, you also know that Xiya's intelligence network has the widest coverage in Xiya. Because our family lacks internal strength, we have incorporated many transcendent families in the past 100 years. One of them is the famous assassin family, the Kalesa family. Xia Luo spoke softly. Luoya listened for a while swirling his wine. He finally understood the ins and outs of the matter. At the same time, he also understood something. Chapter 154. When he heard Xia Luo's words, Luoya's entire body trembled. He turned around to look at the beautiful woman on the bed, and suddenly felt a warm current flowing through his body. As the saying goes, it is important to know one's own limits. Knowing how to count is a good virtue. But today, at this very moment, Luoya felt that Xia Luo's count was probably failing, similar to the level of failure in his previous life. Dressed like this, sitting on the bed, and saying these words with such an expression, was it an invitation or a seduction? Luoya blushed and glared at Xia Luo. The girl immediately knew that her expression was not right, and hurriedly explained. I meant that we need to rest. That's not what I meant. Okay, I'll sleep on the sofa. You sleep early. Luoya's body was hot and dry. He got up and was about to leave the bedroom when he suddenly felt a tug. The youth turned around and saw the red-haired girl tugging at the corner of his clothes. How can we sleep on the sofa? This bed is so wide. It's fine if we each sleep on one side. The red-haired girl said in a low voice. She had never seen anyone sleep on the sofa, and didn't think that it could be used as bedding. Moreover, Luoya, whether he was the heir of a marquis or a fiancé, shouldn't sleep on that kind of thing. Of course, these were all external reasons. What really mattered was the girl's heart. There were 2 reasons why he came to see Adelisa today. One was because Xia Luo wanted to repay Luoya for her recent hard work. The other was because Xia Luo wanted to break away from her childhood and no longer be bound by the past. Originally, Xia Luo's heart was filled with disappointment and pain. Even if their relationship was extremely cold, no child would be happy about this kind of thing. When she talked about her past with Luoya, it was actually a kind of self-release for the girl. However, what she didn't expect was that this kind of release aroused Luoya's resentment and sympathy. When the youth hatched the most beautiful butterfly, affirming her journey alone for so many years, something buried deep in the girl's heart began to overflow uncontrollably. That was the loneliness that she had been suppressing for so many years. That was the weakness of a girl who never exposed herself in front of others. When the butterfly spread its wings, Charlotte's heart seemed to be liberated. For a moment, she even felt that Roja was her family. The two of them had been married for so many years and accompanied each other for a long time. Of course, Xia Luo soon woke up, but that feeling lingered in her heart for a long time. If it was before, Xia Luo would never agree to sleep in the same room as Luoya. But now, just sleeping on the sofa made her inexplicably distressed. Xia Luo's feelings were a little out of control. On the other hand, Luoya's biological instincts were about to go out of control. Today, Xia Luo was dressed very boldly, perhaps because she came to see her mother. It was as if she was deliberately going against the Austin conservatives. But no matter what the reason was, there was an unavoidable problem. Xia Luo's current charm was fatal. In order to grab onto the corner of Luoya's clothes, the girl put down the pillow and threw herself forward. At this time, she was kneeling on the bed with all four limbs. Her big emerald eyes were looking at him with a layer of mist. Under her beautiful face and red lips was a chest that had just grown a little, but appeared more youthful. The wine was a little to the head. Luoya held the wine glass and tried to find an excuse. The black-haired youth was conceited and had a strong resistance to beauty. In the past 3 years he had seen the two top beauties, Ai Lizzie and Nua Ire, again and again. But he had never felt this way before. If appearance was the first layer, then the purity, ignorance, and slight fear in the young Miss eyes were the third layer. The natural contrast with her usual intelligence was the fourth layer. And the fifth layer was Xia Luo's origin substance. It was also the greatest temptation that was madly stimulating Luoya's evil desires. The Sorophia race had many people, and were based on the 3 origin substances of the human race. But for those with a clear Highland Elf bloodline, especially Xia Luo, who had awakened an atavistic bloodline, they had their clan's origin substance. Sorophia's origin substance was loyalty. Just like the other origin substances of the Shia world, Sorophia's origin substance, loyalty, also had a similar promotion method. But because she was a ruler, Sorophia's loyalty was mostly to her family and faith. In this aspect, men naturally referred to their own families. But for women the word loyalty changed with marriage. That's right, most of Sorophia's women chose to be loyal to their own families. In other words, they were loyal to their husbands until death. They were the ultimate nemesis of Taurans. However, just as there were pros and cons to everything, Sorophia's loyalty also had an unknown sadness, and that was the fact that she had entrusted it to the wrong person. This was also the reason why there were so many nobles in Shia, and Sorophia's women were especially miserable when they met with misfortune. Other people's love was continuous and could be interrupted, but Sorophia's love was all in one go. This was also one of the reasons why Xia Luo was afraid of marriage. To a certain extent, it was a path of no return. Luoya completely understood this situation, but at the same time, a kind of instinctive possessiveness was born in him. If he tricked this pitifully naive young lady now, he might be able to obtain a lover who would never leave him after one night. Never leave him. This word seemed to have some kind of magic that made Luoya's brain continue to overheat. In this materialistic and extravagant society where the nobles were used to cheating, a beautiful, noble, and eternally loyal woman was almost every man's dream. At the crucial moment, Luoya, whose face was red from holding back his anger, surged with curses. He raised his hands and cast 2 curses. Cold animal. Thinking has been rationally corrected, greatly reducing the influence of various impulses and desires on decision-making. Chapter 155. King Selection. A hoarse yet familiar voice entered Luoya's ears, causing him to be alert and shudder. It also awakened Luoya's consciousness. Shake, the world is shaking. This was what Luoya felt in his half-awake state. Deep fatigue attacked his body, making him feel as if he had run a 40-kilometer marathon. His eyelids were heavy and he could not open them, but his ears were noisy. Shouts, a lot of shouts, and it was very mixed. Most of them were men's voices, followed by the sound of something falling on a wooden board. There were a lot of them, and they were very dense. Then there was the sound of someone stepping on feces. That's right, it was the sound that Luoya heard in TV dramas. Strictly speaking, it was the sound of something sticky stepping on the ground. After that, there was a sound that Luoya was more familiar with. It was the sound of metal clashing, and the sound of swords cutting into flesh. Luoya was familiar with this sound. He had heard it many times in the past, and it came from large-scale multiplayer sports. War. Wait, war? The moment this word flashed in his mind, Luoya opened his eyes abruptly, and found that his surroundings were completely dark. What's going on? Luoya was confused and uneasy. He felt the cold ground and wanted to get up, but he did not expect that as soon as he propped himself up, the ground shook, and he fell back down. It was a bad start, but Luoya did not come out of it empty-handed. Darkness, shaking, the sound of something rolling on the ground, the sound of fighting and the sound of waves. Luoya, who had experienced it once, knew what it meant. Of course, more important and straightforward was Luoya's system. Warning! 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 Bloodline promotion signs detected. System assistance bloodline promotion activating. Activating witness status. Exploration and freedom, resistance and sacrifice. They are like rolling waves, never yielding. The cracks in the gem are still there, and the gold is dissipated in the ocean. Countdown to witness status end. 119 hours 17 minutes. Bloodline promotion rate. 11%. Evaluation. Low 6. As expected, I knew it. Roha held his head and looked at the system interface. He had a basic idea. According to the current situation and the description of the system, he could only guess where he was now. Golden Ship Crew. Is it 5 days this time? For this situation, the black-haired youth rubbed his head. In fact, he was happy to see this. After all, Roha had too many questions in his heart. What is the purpose of the Golden Ships and the Sages Society? What was the position of Vincent or the Audiobook family in this? Who are the enemies? Who are your friends? These were all questions that Luoya had no clue about, and was eager to know the answers to. However, it was worth mentioning that the contents of the system were not limited to these. Paitila's blessing. The Great Being has high hopes for you. Survival is his blessing and your desire. All attributes will be strengthened within 3 minutes. The degree of strengthening depends on the nature of the curse power. Remaining uses 1. Chapter 156. How strong was Luoya? This was a question that not many people, or perhaps almost no one knew. Whether it was Ai Lizzie, Kadia, or Anna, none of the people in the Audiobook family who were close to Luoya had actually seen him in action. The heavy protection made Xia Luo misjudge Luoya's strength. After all, in her eyes, Luoya was a scholar. However, in reality, as the contractor of the Gulan Daer, under the 2 years of the giant's guidance, Luoya was no longer the same as before. Putting aside the fact that he was at the peak of source level 5 for now, just the exclusive bonus of the crown made Luoya stronger than other people of the same level. His curse power was more condensed, and its speed was faster. Of course, the most important thing was the special characteristic of the crown. Glory return. The warrior who has returned from the ancient times, the power that has disappeared for a long time has finally returned to its homeland. That's right, under the unique ability of the crown, glory return. Luoya could use the power of the ancient existence that he had signed a contract with to a certain extent. The Gulan Daer's strength and some undead skills were the source of the crown. As the saying goes, a strong man can defeat 10 skilled men. The strength attribute had always been a hard currency in actual combat, and this powerful strength combined with Luoya's own curse power formed a set of powerful system. If the monster under his feet was classified according to the strength of a human, it was probably at source level 5, but in reality, it was smashed into meat paste in a single blow. I can probably protect myself, and as your fiancé and the one who opened this historical fragment, I have the responsibility to protect you. Sorry, I don't accept any rebuttal. And we don't have time to discuss these things now. This monster should be a scaly man. This ship was attacked by the seafolk, and the battle situation doesn't seem to be right. Luoya stretched out his hand to stop the girl's words. He looked up at the figures flashing back and forth in the hole above the deck. He quickly gathered information and urgently made a rough judgment of the battle situation. Based on common sense, the allies were undoubtedly the humans on the ship, and the enemies were the invading sea folk. Just now, he saw 7 humanoid creatures passing by above. Only 2 of them were humans, and there were fewer humans who could understand the shouts. Looking at it all, fuck, we're going to lose. When this thought flashed through his mind, Luoya's heart could be said to sink to the bottom. Even fools knew that this was the sea folk. Once this ship was captured, he and Xia Luo would almost certainly die. Hurry! While the humans are still alive, we must protect this ship. In the deafening battle cries, Luoya's expression changed as he shouted at Xia Luo. Then he stepped on the rotten wood and rushed up to the hole above. The girl, who also understood that this was a critical moment, followed closely behind. During the process of climbing, the light above continued to expand in their eyes. Finally, after a bright light, it turned into a vast sea and sky background. At the moment when they saw the scene outside, the 2 people who rushed out of the hole could not help but be stunned. Their bodies stiffened, and their hearts were greatly shocked. It was a huge fleet sailing on the sea with huge waves, fighting with countless monsters. On the high-pole giant ship, there were people coming and going. Humans were holding swords in their hands and shouting to kill. In the sea, the heads of the monsters swarmed up along the hull of the ship. Their dim yellow eyes were filled with coldness. The sea monsters stretched out their tower-like tentacles and wrapped around the warships. Deep and strange cries that made one's scalp numb came from the deep sea. On the opposite side of the warships, powerful magic fluctuations turned into laser-like shots that shot into the sea. The power was so great that it could set off huge waves. The roars of the humans, the strange cries of the monsters, the roars of the cannons, and the miserable screams of the injured sea monsters. Countless noises rushed into one's ears. It made one's scalp numb, and there was a storm in one's heart. Luoya looked at the scene that resembled a mythical battlefield in a daze for a moment. However, he quickly reacted and looked around. At the same time, Xia Luo's voice sounded. Be careful. The girl warned loudly. The next moment, 2 monsters covered in scales rushed towards them. Luoya narrowed his eyes and immediately activated Bloody Disaster. After sensing the murderous intent, the dark red color, and the 2 names that were completely garbled allowed Luoya to confirm the identity of the enemies. However, this time, the one who made the first move was Xia Luo. Gem Trigger. The girl with brownish-red hair stroked the ring on her hand. The next moment, the bright and exquisite ring suddenly emitted light and began to extend. It finally turned into a beautiful pistol-like curse vessel. It was a dreamlike work of art composed of precious metals and minerals. The cartridge that resembled a revolver wasn't filled with ammunition, but with colorful gems. When the sun shone, a bright light flickered in Charlotte's hand, but outsiders didn't know that the light was the blessing of the Grim Reaper. Gem Trigger. This was the legendary curse vessel of the Sorophia family. Just like the short blade of the Holy One to the Theocracy, the Gem Trigger was also a great creation passed down from ancient times. It was the heritage of the Highland Elves. It was a universal trigger that could launch all curses. Ruby Reload. The girl with brownish-red hair reached out and raised the curse vessel. She didn't aim, but she pointed in one direction with an indifferent expression. The next moment, her white finger gently tapped the trigger. The crisp sound was pleasant to the ears. Ka. Chapter 157. Captain Jeff felt that this might be the last day of his life. Jeff was 50 years old this year. He wasn't tall, and his appearance wasn't anything special. His gray hair carried the vicissitudes of life, and he wore a simple sailor outfit. He didn't look too different from any other crew member who mopped the deck. However, even though he looked ordinary, this middle-aged man was actually an expert whose strength had reached Origin Grade 3. The Golden Fleet was the name of the Kingdom of Sophia's army. It was a huge fleet that had already pacified the sea before the humans had even pacified the land. The ships were divided into 3 classes. As the captain of the first-class vice flagship, St. Paul, Jeff's strength was well known. However, he felt that he was powerless now. The deep-sea scaly people were the arch-enemies of the Golden Fleet. As an opponent, they had ample experience in dealing with the Golden Fleet. However, due to the previous civil war, part of the St. Paul's functions had been damaged, causing the vice-captain of the St. Paul's to be seriously injured. On the Golden Fleet's warships, if the captain was injured, it would affect the morale. However, as long as he didn't die, it wouldn't be a big problem. However, the two vice-captains were very precious. The vice-captains of the Golden Fleet all had the blood of the Highland Elves. They might not be strong, but they were the key to many cursed devices on the warship. The reason why the Golden Fleet was so powerful was that it used a lot of the lost technology of the Highland Elves. These things required the blood of the Sophia family to be activated. It could be said that the vice-captain of each ship was a strategic resource. A golden warship that was manned and an unmanned golden warship were two completely different things. Usually, the vice-captain's control room was very safe. However, during the Civil War, one of the vice-captains defected to the rebels. The St. Paul's warship was hit by a curse bomb during the battle with the rebels, causing the protection of the control room to be greatly damaged. Although they won that battle, no one would have thought that this small aftereffect would bring disaster to everyone. Die. A heavy punch with a dragon-like curse power smashed the chest of a giant scaly person. Jeff's eyes widened in anger as he roared, and directly tore the general of the third source-rank scaly person in front of him in half. Flesh and blood splattered like rain. The middle-aged man whose body was dyed red looked at the shocked expression of the scaly person before he died and shook his head. I can't fight in the water. You can't fight on land. Thinking of this, Jeff exhaled and reached out his hand to cover the bloody hole in his abdomen. He turned his head to look at the people around him. How is Vice-Captain Ravel? Captain. I'm afraid Vice-Captain Rawe won't make it. When the ship doctor covered in blood spoke these words, the expressions of everyone nearby changed. An indescribable silence abruptly appeared in this battlefield filled with war cries that shook the heavens. Vice-Captain Ravel was dying, which meant that the golden battleship would stop operating. Now there were many curse vessels protecting everyone. Soon, the electric net outside the hull would disappear. At that time, everyone would no longer face the elite army of the scaled people, but countless monsters as vast as the sea. How long can the power grid last? About 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Jeff muttered to himself as he looked at the horde of scaly people and the sailors who were fighting in front of him. As a person who had been on the sea for half his life, he was already prepared for it. But it was a pity that so many young people had died. A strong sense of sorrow rose in the middle-aged man's heart. He quickly walked to the front of the young man who had fallen to the ground, and bent over to look at his pale face. Ravel, can you hold on for another 10 minutes? Brothers, let's drag a few of them down with us. At that time, you will activate the central golden soul, bring the big guys outside, and let's go together. The young man whose chest and abdomen had been cut open and whose consciousness had begun to blur, widened his eyes slightly. At this moment, the young man who was on the verge of death seemed to have regained his consciousness. He smiled with a little pride and made a promise softly. All right. Leave it to me, Captain. Good job. Looking at the young man who was dedicated to his duty at the last moment, Jeff grinned. He raised his head and looked around. All he saw were calm faces. Those were the warriors who buried their fear in the bottom of their hearts and faced death with equanimity. Sorry, everyone. What does the dog trader and the fish cub have to do with you, Captain? It's the last battle. The shield is yours. The warriors chuckled, stood up and walked to the front line under Jeff's leadership. The old captain reached out and wiped his eyes, burying the last sadness in his heart. Next, it was a desperate charge. Killing more enemies and reducing the pressure on their allies was the last thing they could do. The sailors drew their swords and axes, but before the final battle began, the uproar at the front line had rushed into their ears. Captain, who's that? The sailors next to him exclaimed and pointed to the front. Jeff wiped his hands and looked forward, and his eyes widened suddenly. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.